right, fellas. That's 21. That's 21 like blackjack. Cheers
We
to
did
21. Chug it down like you just murdered 2 terrorists. All right. Welcome back to Ranked. I'm Charles.
I'm McCurdy.
I'm Nanz.
Hey, guys. Maybe we shouldn't do that. Is that played out? We've been doing the same thing for 20 movies. Do you think it's getting a little stale, a little played out?
Oh, it was stale a long time ago.
Okay. Do you guys have any ideas for anything we can do different to open this? Oh, I got one. Watch this. Watch this. Watch
You got
this.
one? Okay.
Watch this. You see that? Stylish, right?
I mean, yeah. It's
Yeah.
still got to be
It's
super
all right.
grainy, though.
Everybody looks cooler in black and white.
I don't know.
Right.
Is it enough? Do you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Wait, do you feel that? Do you hear the heavenly choirs? Do you feel the spirit? Do you feel the Martine Campbell spirit? Do you feel it? Do you feel holy?
I feel something.
Do you feel the spirit? Do you feel the spirit? Behold, hallelujah, and a good goddamn, the second revelation is upon us. Repent, all ye sinners, for our Lord and Savior Martine Campbell has had a second coming, delivering unto us a whole New Testament on top of the old. GoldenEye and Casino Royale, the holy scriptures of Bond. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
As it was foretold in a prophecy of old, from the ashes of the Connery, Lazenby, Moore, Dalton, Brosnan, Bond verse would come a new verse. The Phoenix rebooted after bursting of flame. A new blonde-haired, blue-eyed Bond arisen, delivering unto us a whole new era of starkness and darkness, of murder and grit, a Bondian heaven of blood, babes, and ball smacking. Ian Fleming, the Lord of Bond, has sent his Messiah, Martine Campbell, to deliver us to the promised land. The old Bond Testament, one of goofiness and fun, has been rewritten and replaced with a leave the kids at home moodiness. This ain't no Moonraker. This ain't no Diamonds Are Forever. This ain't even no Dr. No. This is a brave new world, a serious Bond for a serious post 9/11 pre-woke. Wonderful world of terrorism, babes, shooting, poker, babes, murder, blood, poker, poison, babes, dismemberment, love, hate, balls, smacking, homicide, suicide, kneecapicide, and learning important spy life lessons like trust no one and love no hoe. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
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 Martine Campbell, amen. Anyways, Casino Royale brings us back to the beginning of Bond, who has just been promoted to a 00. His first assignment puts him on the trail of a bomb maker who takes us on an explosive, free-running set piece that serves to showcase how this new Bond operates. He is truly Her Majesty's blunt instrument, a hammer, not a scalpel, always looking to smash his way to victory, a nuke, not a smart bomb, a brawler, not a ballerina. Bond's actions lead to the bankrupting of Le Chiffre, or Le Chiffre, a terrorist financier who gambled with his clients' millions and lost big, necessitating his organizing of a $100 million Texas Hold'em tournament at the Casino Royale in French Montenegro. Because they need what's in Le Chiffre's head more than his head itself, Her Majesty's government sends Bond to beat the baddie at his own game, armed only with $15 million, a young accountant super babe Vesper Lind, and an old French MI6 operative named Mathis. Bond first loses the game, then he wins the game and the money and the babe, then he loses the babe, then he loses his balls, then he wins the babe without his balls, then he loses the babe and the money at the same time, but in the end gets back his balls when he snipes Mr. White, the bad guy behind the bad guys of this entire story, a man that's part of an unknown secret organization, but that's a story for another time. All that's left is a simple introduction, but you, me, and the Queen already know his name.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
McCurdy?
What do I have for
How
you?
you doing?
I'm alive. I'm here.
Okay.
You want to know something about this movie?
Do you know anything about this movie? It's kind of an obscure movie. Not many people
So
know about this one.
obscure.
Yeah.
So obscure.
It's the obscurest since Secret Service.
It's so obscure, except
Yeah.
it's not. Anyway, to
Most
understand
people
the
don't
film,
know Secret Service exists. Most people
Really?
don't know that. Yeah. But anyway,
Are
go
you
on.
being
People
serious?
that do know about it don't care about it.
All right, so to understand this movie, we must go back, gentlemen. We must go back. To
Are
understand
we
the history
going
of this
back to the
film-
books?
Going back to
Just
the
like they do every other movie?
So to understand the beginning, of course, we have to go to the first book, which is Ian Fleming's first novel. So this book was released in 1953, and then a year later, in 54, he sold the rights for only $1,000 to CBS to do the teleplay for Climax, was the name of the television show.
Climax presents Casino Royale from the bestseller by Ian Fleming.
Aren't you the fellow who was shot?
No, I'm the fellow who was missed.
But that is the first appearance of James Bond on screen, which we covered that in our pilot episode, our very, very, very first episode. So you can check that out. A year after that, Fleming would sell the film rights. So that was the TV rights. He would sell the film rights to Casino in 1955 to somebody else. And that's partly why, Broccoli and Salzman, they didn't have the rights when they started Eon Productions for Casino Royale. So the first Casino Royale film that came out was a spoof film,
Casino Royale is too much for one James Bond.
and it starred actors such as Orson Welles played Le Chiffre or Le Chiffre,
Orson Welles is the heaviest heavy of Smirch.
David Niven,
David Niven is James Bond.
Woody Allen,
Woody Allen is James Bond.
and even Ursula Anders from Dr. No.
Ursula Andress is James Bond.
Ursula
And-
Andress.
I knew I was going to mess that
Out of
one up.
respect for her, I'm going to correct you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Because I respect women.
But anyway, the important part was that film was under Columbia Pictures, so they couldn't use that first book. Another Eon nemesis was even planning on creating his competing Bond franchise. Our good old boy, Kevin McClory,
The real life Blofeld.
the real-life Blofeld. Remember, he had the rights to Thunderball, which also included Spectre, was in that as well. So he had the rights to that tied up with Columbia Pictures, and of course, they made Never Say Never Again.
Sean Connery is Ian Fleming's James Bond in Never Say Never Again.
Basically, which is Thunderball remake. So his idea was like, oh, I'm going to keep doing these Bond films because I have Casino Royale and I have Thunderball. I could make more movies with this. And of course, Eon Productions is like, hold on, buddy. Like, you don't own James Bond, okay? Like, we have all the rights from Fleming himself.
He's such a bastard.
Yeah.
I want everything.
So how did Eon Productions get the rights back for Casino Royale? Well, it turns out that Columbia Pictures, aka Sony Pictures at this point, because Sony had acquired Columbia Pictures in the late 80s, they made a trade with MGM in 1999 for, guess what movie? You wouldn't guess.
Wait,
You're not
give me a
gonna-
hint. Give me a hint.
It's a superhero movie with spiders.
Oh, I was going to say Spider-Man. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
so Spider-Man, MGM had the film rights to Spider-Man. And so they swapped the rights. They were like, we'll take the rights to Casino Royale if you give us Spider-Man. And that was also partly in due with a lawsuit that also included Kevin McClory. I don't know the logistics of it.
What
It's
a
just,
mess.
that's kind of what happened. It was a whole mess. This
It was,
happened in
it was also
1999.
Ian Fleming could make what, like $1,000? All this mess over $1,000.
Well, the CBS rights for the TV were $1,000, but when he sold it for the film rights, it was for like $6,000. And again, that's in 1955. So I don't
Yeah.
know how much that equates till today, but
And then he
still.
died less than 10 years later. It's just
Yeah.
sad. The whole thing is
Sad.
just sad. The whole franchise is a mess. And even after they reboot it with this movie, it's still a mess. Everything's a mess. It's just
We'll
awful.
get to that. Let's get to
It's
that.
still great.
So then they got the rights to Casino. They didn't get the rights to Thunderball. And we had talked about before when we got to which one was it, For Your Eyes Only. They were just like, you know what? F you, Kevin. We don't need Blofeld to make these Bond films. We can do it without Blofeld. And that was that whole point of, throwing Blofeld down the chute, essentially.
They should have stuck to that.
So because of that, because Kevin's like, well, I have Thunderball introduced Spectre, therefore I own Spectre. It just turns out that when 2006 rolls around, when this movie comes out, not that long after, Kevin McClory passes away. His wife, in turn, is like, here's Thunderball. You can buy the rights back to Thunderball. So Eon Productions got Thunderball back. So therefore, that's when they started doing Spectre. it's just weird how the timing of all that happened, because you can see how the writers of this movie really, really wanted it to be Spectre.
Money isn't as valuable to our organization as knowing who to trust.
They couldn't say the name of the organization.
Which works.
It does work. Like, I don't think we needed to say it. If you're a fan, you'd be like, oh, I know who this is.
Yeah.
But then when you know where the films go after this, you're like, this is a mess.
Yeah, but talk about that later.
Talk about that later. So they swapped the rights for this film. That was in 1999, which is right when they were doing World Is Not Enough. And then in 2002, we did Die Another Day, which is a weird turn of events. Like right before this movie comes out in 2005, Sony acquires MGM, thereby making this movie a Sony picture, which means every device that Bond owns is a Sony product.
Or interacts with.
Yeah, that Vio.
Sony Ericsson phones.
No one has ever used those phones.
And Sony is just so product placement heavy with everything they make. So it's just no surprise at all.
It's kind of a joke.
But it's, you know, product placement makes the movie world go round these days, whatever.
Sure.
Like we would say, Bond has never been above product placement. It's just always been products that we can't afford.
Rolex.
Omega watches and Aston Martin DB5s and all that stuff, or the DBS, I guess.
But to be fair, this movie, when it comes to the product placement, because they knew they went too heavy in the last film, they toned it down, especially in their marketing, as how much product placement they were doing, because they realized that left a sore taste in people's mouths on how much there was.
Hello, it's Q. Hello, Q speaking. Hello, it's Q. Oh, what do you want, 007? Hold on. Good evening, Em.
See the latest Bond film, Die Another Day, at a theater near you.
So the question remains, so why didn't Brosnan return? Because obviously he was a great Bond. Like I think we all would say that he was a good James Bond. Brosnan said in 2004, 2 years after Die Another Day, that he was retiring from the role. But when it comes down to it, based off the poor reception of Die Another Day, how the world had changed due to 9/11, Eon Productions was looking for a different route to take the franchise. Fortunately, with recently acquiring the rights to the first Bond novel, this gave them an in for what they would do next. Brosnan, being too old to pass as a new Bond, was out, and they began looking for the next James Bond, which is kind of makes sense. He was looking rough in the last movie, so there's no way they were going to bring him back for Casino, which brings me to the next thing, is also in 2005, which I'm still baffled because I don't understand when they bring this up a lot. And I'm like, this is more coincidence than it is like they saw this movie and were like, oh, we're going to do the same thing. So in 2005, we had Batman Begins rebooting its respective franchise.
Chris Nolan, shout out for the millionth time.
With the millionth time, right? Which after this film would forever weirdly intertwine the Craig films and the Nolan Batman films in my own headcanon, which again, we'll get to that as the next couple movies come along.
A guy with an unlimited amount of money who goes and beats up baddies with a bunch of gadgets provided by a gadget man. Yeah. One guy wears a suit, the other guy wears a suit. It's almost like we should do the Batman movies next.
I feel compelled. So, okay, anyway, rebooting is simply stating that you are starting a given franchise anew.
Like the phoenix from the ashes, life begins anew.
God. So you're saying the next entry's canon does not continue the previous entry's canon, and that it's a fresh start. I only make that distinction because some people get confused on what's a remake, what's a reboot. So like a remake would be like what Never Say Never Again was, which was we're taking the same script, the same story, and redoing it.
Yeah. And it just so happened to have Sean Connery, but that's beside the point. It is a straight up remake.
Much like this movie still has Judy Dench.
And then other people try to headcanon their way through the timeline where it's like, okay, Casino Royale, and then the events of this with Connery, and then more. They try to jump around, and it's like, no. It's very simple. And we don't need to talk about the movies after Casino, but it's very simple. They had 20 films.
Yeah.
And then they started fresh.
Yeah.
And this new series is going to be self-contained. This movie takes place in the year 2006. It doesn't take place in the 50s or the 60s. No. It is starting new. It's hitting reset. There's and then it turns into Sean Connery for 2 movies, and then Roger Moore for a couple. No. 20 movies are behind us. This is all new.
I think when people refer to that, they're saying the events of those movies are taking place at a further point in time.
I say no.
But then again, that's how.
The weird thing
hold
is,
on, let me.
I've never thought of any of that.
Okay, so let me finish though.
I just
So
watched
at
the
times, though,
I just live my life.
as we all know, they ended up picking Daniel Craig as James Bond. And a lot of people hated this because Craig is blonde and not brunette, like every other incarnation of the character.
James Blonde.
James Blonde.
James Blonde.
Classic.
Or is it Bond? I'm confused.
I'm a little confused.
It's the perfect internet thing. The internet is always just nitpicking stupidity, you know? Heath Ledger, the guy from 10 Things I Hate About You, is going to be a bad guy?
Yeah.
No. And then it ends up being the best thing ever, and everybody shuts the hell up after that.
And now you're just like,
at first, everybody's
whatever.
it's got to be like 10 alarm fire, you know.
Yeah.
Oh my God, James Bond, his hair is, you know. They should dye it, you know, which would be.
Yeah, and of course, I've got to mention, you know, other people that were up for the role was Henry Cavill was a contender. But
Back
at the
then,
time,
really?
Wow.
but at the time he was 22, so they were like, "You're a little too young." Like they wanted, because remember, like Dalton was young when he originally auditioned, and he was too young at the time.
They still should have given it to him, but yeah, he was.
Yeah,
too
but
young.
he's a little too young. So they're like,
Yeah.
we need someone just like hitting that 30s mark. But like, if you're too young in your 20s, but you're about right in some time in their early 30s, mid 30s.
like
so basically
Sean
our
said,
age
it
right
should
now.
be 35.
Yeah, Carl Urban. I don't know how to say his name.
Dude.
He was up for the role.
Dude. Oh. Somebody from Lord of the Rings would have been in this?
So you had him and Ewan McGregor were also up for the role. They didn't get
Ewan
it, of course.
McGregor.
At the time, Craig was known for such films as Road to Perdition
Yes.
and Tomb Raider. But
Yep.
my personal favorite was always the 1995 Disney classic, A Kid in King Arthur's Court.
You're a knight in training. Good fit. Can you see?
Perfectly.
A Kid in King Arthur's Court.
How embarrassing.
For Daniel Craig or Ryan McCurdy?
just in general.
It's just fun to see Daniel Craig in that era because you're like, oh yeah, this guy goes on to play James Bond, and then he's in this silly Disney movie where he plays a knight.
You really gotta give it to him for Layer Cake. I mean, Layer Cake was like right before this. Kind of a funny note is that the end of Layer Cake is the
My name? If you knew that, you'd be as clever as me.
nobody knows my name and I'll never tell you my name, blah, blah, blah. And then the end of this movie is him giving his character name.
The name's Bond.
It's just kind of like a weird parallel between those two crime movies that he made back to back, basically.
Quentin Tarantino was up to direct or write some version of this movie prior to this movie coming out. He wanted to make this movie with Brosnan and set it at a different time period. But of course, they're never going to do that. So
The reason they wouldn't do that, they hire, quote, nobody directors, and they do it because James Bond is the star, not the director. And Quentin Tarantino, who makes great movies,
yeah,
but Tarantino's personality is tied up in his movies. You can't
Sure.
separate him from his movies. It's like he's always there waving in the background. So he would have made this about him, and that's why they're like, nah, dude, we need somebody who's going to, you know, it's almost like the Marvel thing. We need somebody who's going to play by our rules.
with like Martin Scorsese or whoever it was. I think it was Spielberg or Scorsese recently had said something about how all of the Marvel films are really, it's work for hire, really. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think, I think I'm misquoting who it was who said it, but basically they were saying like Marvel films are work for hire. They don't really hire filmmakers. They hire in much the same way television is done, where you hire a TV director, but they don't really have as much control. They really work with the actors, but that's, as far as their vision goes, it's not that far. That's not necessarily to say
It's
that
not a
they don't
bad
have
thing.
anything.
It's not a bad thing. They
But it's
still
more to
bring
keep
a
things
lot.
a little more consistent. But I mean, to be fair, when we were talking about that, and you know, we were mentioning, you know, your Lord and Savior Martin Campbell coming
Do you
back.
feel
for
the
this
spirit?
movie.
Do you feel
Feel
the spirit, brother?
But the thing
Do
about Martin
you
Campbell,
feel the spirit, my brother?
oh my Lord. So Martin Campbell, though, like I think it's interesting you point that out because he's not an auteur director. He doesn't have a style that's specific to Martin Campbell. Like you're not going to put in a Martin Campbell movie and then still be like, yeah, Martin Campbell directed this. Much like if you were to put in like a Spielberg or a Scorsese or like a Tarantino, as what we were talking about. Like you know instantly those are his movies. But that's part of the point.
It is arguable that makes him a better director.
Because his style is not seen.
The reason you don't go with Tarantino,
Yeah.
who again makes great movies. Once again, maybe we should do those someday.
Yeah.
You don't go with that because it's like somebody I can't remember who it was, but some filmmaker at one point said something along the lines of, the moment that an editor wins an Oscar, which are meaningless these days, but whatever. The moment that an editor wins an Oscar or any kind of like major award, I don't work with them anymore. Why? Because that's the editor stepping out from behind the shadows, and it's like they edit in a way where it's noticeable. As opposed to a good editor, the editing becomes invisible. You don't even notice it. If you're noticing the editing, the editor is not doing their job correctly. So it is debatable that when a movie is so stylish that all you can see is the thumbprints of the filmmaker all over it, it breaks the immersion. And you don't want that. And so you could argue that Martin Campbell, let him be praised, is a better filmmaker than Tarantino.
But I mean, you can also, we were making the parallel with this and Marvel, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Like most of the directors in the Marvel canon, with the exception of a handful, that being maybe James Gunn and Taika Waititi, most of them don't really have distinct voices, because most of them, even the Russo brothers, are kind of
look at Taika.
Because they're very TV style.
His movie stands out. It sticks out like a sore thumb. It's very fun, but it sticks out like a sore thumb. It's like, hey, look, I made this movie. It's like chiseling your name into the statue of Marvel, like vandalizing the statue of Marvel. So like Scorsese, of course, is going to say that's a negative thing. And that he can say that because he's like the king. But when you have a franchise, everybody has to bow before the characters. And you mentioned TV. It's no different from TV. If you're going to come into this TV show, you have to bow down to the characters, because the characters are the things that are going to live on. And if you're just here to stick your thumbprint on this get out. Get out, because you're being selfish. You're not catering to, as M would put it, the big picture, which kind of transitions into one of the themes of this movie is about Bond learning to abide by the big picture, and not necessarily just his ego, but cater to the big picture versus yourself.
We're trying to find out how an entire network of terrorist groups is financed, and you give us one bomb maker. Hardly the big picture, wouldn't you say?
Your people would still welcome me with open arms, because they need what I know.
Do you have anything more, McCurdy?
I got two more things.
You got two more things?
I got two more things.
Well, off and do it.
Off. Just off. Actually, I think it's three. It's three cameos. So one of them, you're watching the movie, you're sitting there, and all of a sudden this guy turns around and you're like, wait, why do I know that face? And it's for like 2 seconds in the movie, and sure enough, it's Richard Branson.
No, it's Hugo Drax. I mean, Gustav Graves.
Graves.
Richard Branson.
Richard Branson of Virgin Mobile, because the airline that they were using for this film or whatever, he had a part in.
Yeah, you see Virgin planes here and there.
He probably put in his contract, was like, I need to be in the movie, or put me in a cameo or something. They're like, sure, why not? We don't give a shit. You're giving us money, why not? I've heard stories where sometimes they'll do those kinds of things, but they just give them the footage. They don't actually put it in the final cut. But in this case, it was like, it doesn't matter. It's like for 2 seconds.
It's like a long shot of him, so he's kind of far enough away that you're not paying attention to the person. You're looking at the bad guy at the moment. Like Nanz just said, he didn't even catch it. That's the perfect cameo when nobody catches it. That is the perfect cameo.
This one's not so much a cameo. It is just an actor who has been in other stuff later on, but then you see him in an earlier work. So we got Tobias Menzies. I can butchered his name, but I don't really care. He's from Game of Thrones. He was in Game of Thrones. You remember him?
He's the weak Tully. He was like the embarrassing Tully.
Anyway, he plays Villers, which when you watch the movie and you're a Bond fan, Villiers, but you think it's Bill Tanner. It's not.
Yeah.
And apparently they based the character to be Bill Tanner, but he's based off the guy who played Bill Tanner in For Your Eyes Only, whose name was James Villiers.
Because I was trying to figure out whether or not he was Bill Tanner, I looked into it myself, because I was like, they never say the name Tanner. So is this guy Tanner or not? And only one time does M say the name Villiers.
According to Villiers, you're the best player in the service.
And I guess she just took his word for it? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a reference to James Villiers, who played Bill Tanner in For Your Eyes Only, but also a reference to Amherst Villiers, an automotive expert name dropped in the original Casino Royale novel. So there are 2 instances of Villiers. So it's like 2 references at once. And it comes from the Casino Royale novel. So it's kind of
supposed to be a reference of a character. It's a weird thing to put in a movie.
Why not
it's
just
like,
do
why don't you
Tanner?
just put Bill Tanner? Yeah.
Yeah, why not do Tanner? Yeah, I don't know why.
It's a weird thing. Then our boy Mikey G. Whiz plays the chief.
I never said Gee Whiz once in this whole movie. Gee Whiz, this movie's great.
Mikey G. Whiz sitting back with the Montenegro. He's just sitting back with his
With 2
babes.
chicks. I want to know, was his character bribed with more than money?
Just sitting there with 2 chicks.
You know, yeah.
Consider him
That's a good
slimed.
bribe.
Consider him slimed, guys.
Consider him slimed.
All right, well, I gotta take care of some business. I gotta do some shilling for the channel since no one else will.
Cool.
Oh.
All right.
Take the wheel.
Yeah,
Nanz,
Char, maybe
Nanzus.
slow zoom into my blurry webcam footage.
There you go.
And the audience can pretend to be listening to In the Arms of an Angel by Sarah McLachlan, since I doubt we can play it, right? That'll definitely get flagged.
2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm Nanz. Will you be an angel for a helpless YouTube channel? Every day, our channel is abused, beaten, and neglected by viewers that don't like, subscribe, share, comment, super chat, or join our membership or our newly minted Discord channel. And we're crying out for help. Please, click the shit on the screen and join the ranked channel membership with a monthly gift right now. For just 99 cents a month, only 3 cents a day, you'll help rescue our channel from our abusers and provide medical care, food, shelter, and love for our helpless editor, Charlie. Join online in the next several hours while you watch this episode, and you'll receive a welcome kit with these crappy emotes and badges, and a smug sense of self-righteousness. Our channel will get a second chance thanks to you, and we will continue to try to put out 1 episode a quarter, maybe longer, depending on how Charlie feels. Clearly he feels like shit right now. Right now, this channel needs you. Your clicks and crap say you're here to help. Please click right now.
Ranked needs you, so please join now or get f***ed.
All right, the list, fellas. The standings are as follows. GoldenEye,
Goldfinger,
From Russia with Love,
License to Kill,
The Spy Who Loved Me,
The Man with the Golden Gun,
Dr. No,
The World's Not Enough,
A View to a Kill,
For Guys Only,
Her Majesty's Secret Service,
Thunderball,
Tomorrow Never Dies,
Octopussy,
The Living Daylights,
Live and Let Die,
Moonraker,
Diamonds Are Forever,
Die Another Day.
You Only Live Twice.
Nanz, what's the gut reaction, Nanz review to this movie film?
Oh my god, it's so good, guys. It's
Wow.
my favorite.
The toppest praise that Nanz has ever.
Toppest.
He actually,
Literally
his
ranked
voice
number
went up
one.
a little bit. Like he got really excited there. Normally he's just drab and stoic.
I think this is the best Bond movie so far.
Okay, that's fair. But let me tell you why you're fucking wrong.
Please do. That's why we're here.
Pretty sure I don't need to ask anybody here right now in attendance that we're fighting for number 1 tonight between Casino Royale and GoldenEye. McCurdy has a look on his face like this. Even if you disagree, that's what we're looking at, right, dude? We're looking at this. The question is whether or not this is going to be GoldenEye then Casino or Casino then GoldenEye. That's Nanz.
I think so.
McCurdy.
Yes.
McCurdy, you look reserved. Okay, he's going to hold his tongue for now.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what I think after watching it, because I feel like I watched this movie for the first time now. I thought I'd seen this movie. I really thought I'd seen this movie before, and then I watched it this time, and I was like, okay, like it's not a bad movie.
I thought I knew you, Casino. I thought I knew
It's
you.
not a bad movie, but in the same vein of how I feel about License to Kill, where License to Kill is like, it's a really fun 80s action movie, but it just doesn't quite feel like a Bond movie. This is kind of how I feel about Casino a little bit after watching it, because I was like, something's missing. That's how I feel about this movie.
This is wild.
So much so that
That's strange.
as
This
I go
is
through the entire
controversial.
film, It is.
Sorry, go ahead.
It is. So after watching this movie, I was like, I swore, like, going into this, we were going to be like, oh yeah, this is going to be Casino versus GoldenEye. Like, it's going to be hard to figure out which one's better. But the more I sat down and thought about Casino Royale, I was like, this movie kind of sucks in some regards, and it's kind of good. I'm like, this movie kind of sucks, but it's also really good.
Bold. This is that. Oh, dude. Wow.
And here's why. Nanz, this is why.
All the Boris Grushenkos are commenting the out of what you just said.
They're like, what? Casino
McCurdy,
Royale
after
sucks?
all my shilling, you're going to scare them all away.
I know. Listen, I think sucks might be a strong word.
Yeah,
but
it is.
Let me start with the positives, right? You've got really good performances across the board. All the characters, across the board, really great performances. I think one of the highlights people would say is Eva Green and Craig's chemistry is really good. Like, they have some really good scenes together. That stuff's really great.
It's beyond just really good. It is the best James Bond romance to date, possibly ever.
Yeah.
I think that's, nobody can contend with that. This is everything that Secret Service wishes it was, so far as romance goes. That being said, go ahead.
Filmmaking is pretty excellent, like, across the board.
State of the art.
State of the art. It's not a bottom 10 for me. It's not like this movie is complete garbage and should be forgotten about. No, it's not that.
Dude, I am so excited to hear what your proposition
if
is.
It's not
Jesus
top
Christ.
3, I will be shocked.
The two things that kind of lack for me, the pacing of this movie is weird. So the script to me is a little off at times. We're not talking about the dialogue necessarily. We're talking about how the film is structured. And then on top of that, it's just this movie is way longer. I think this movie is unnecessarily longer than it actually needs to be. But that's also because when I watched the movie, I sat there and I was like, I'm watching 3 movies. This isn't one movie. This is, let me take this book and tack on an hour of action movie because this isn't going to cut it. Because we both know that we all watched the teleplay. The teleplay is practically that second portion of the movie.
It's literally just all within the Casino Royale. That's where the whole story takes place. And this actually, McCurdy, you talking about the rights issues, that actually clears up some confusion for me, because back in the Dr. No episode, we talked about why exactly did they decide to start with Dr. No, and we said it was, well, because it's a very simple story. It just takes place in Jamaica, and it's just it's something that they could handle with a small amount of money. Well, then my next question was, well, yeah, but that being the case, why not do Casino Royale? Because it's even simpler. Well, that makes sense that they couldn't. So with that, with Casino not being an option, they had to do Dr. No. But now that you're going to make Casino, where you do have an unlimited amount of money, you necessarily have to add to it because it's so simple. So essentially what you have, we never really talk about the books. It's almost necessary here because of everything I just said. Yeah. This movie, the second half of it, as soon as you get to the Casino Royale, that's the book. From there to the end is the book. Everything before that, it's setting up a context in which Le Chiffre needs money.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure yet how much you've lost.
$101,206,000.
It establishes Bond too, though, right?
Sure,
he just became a 00. He's still trying to figure it out.
That's all in the book, though. That's all in the book. Le Chiffre, though, in the book is like, I invested in a bunch of whorehouses that fell through because of the changes of some laws or whatever.
Yeah.
This, though, takes that, modernizes it, runs with it, and it's pretty great. Your point being that are you saying that you can kind of feel that that's an addition versus like this novel that was very much self-contained?
Yeah, I can feel it.
What if Le Chiffre's cat houses are going down because Bond got in there with his chlamydia or something? And it's just
Bond, we need you to get in there and start banging all his hookers.
We need you to take down Le Chiffre's.
I'll use my dick.
I think it doesn't help the movie that Eva Green is introduced halfway through the film. Like, I just feel like you could have introduced. It is. It's pretty far into the movie. And I feel like you could have introduced her maybe sooner and might have helped some of those issues where I don't feel like I'm watching 2 different movies.
Are the pacing and length issues you have related?
It's more the length, because I feel like you could cut that first half of the movie, because really all that first half of the movie is, if you recall, that movie is 101 a detective story, right? Bond finds a clue. Bond investigates that clue. Bond finds where that clue leads, Bond finds a new clue. That clue leads him to something else. That clue leads something to something else. He does it. There's like 3 things that he leads him finally to figuring out this plane attack. And that's where like the middle of the movie is right when he discovers, oh, this is Le Chiffre's plan or somebody's plan. We don't know who it is. He doesn't know who it is at that point. Stops the plane attack. And then that's when Judi Dench is like, yo, someone put some shorts on. We'll get into that.
9/11.
We're going to get into it.
That's where maybe the movie should start as M.
I think it should have started sooner.
Here's your mission. We hear some dude's about to try to attack a plane.
But there's stuff, and then there's some other little things where I feel like they were. So basically, what I'm saying is, I feel like they had this book, and they're like Charlie said, this is a very condensed, simplified story. Which, by the way, I didn't mention. Ian Fleming had said that when he was in World War II, he would go to Portugal. Portugal at the time was neutral, so a lot of spies would go to Portugal, and he would play baccarat, which is not in this movie, but something I wouldn't want to mention later. But he played baccarat with people from different countries and stuff. He says that he got wiped out by a German, some German spy wiped him out. The other story is another guy who was friends with him was like, that's not entirely true. Like, he played with a bunch of Portugal businessmen. He just always dreamed how cool it would be to face somebody from the other side.
He clearly had an overactive imagination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where the book comes from. That's the idea behind it. Because literally the book is, Bond, you're our best poker player. Instead of doing a mission where you have to go kill somebody, we just want you to beat you in this game of poker, which is what this movie, or baccarat, but that's what this movie is, basically. When you get to the second half of the movie, we got to have action sequences. So I really am sitting there and I feel like there's types of this movie where it's really slow paced to the point where I'm like, did someone not go in the edit and like kind of maybe speed some of this stuff up a little bit?
Where would you say? Where does it slow down for you?
It slows, like, it's just throughout the movie, really. And there's a lot of it's not a bad thing.
What about the poker playing? Because I would say that rivals Goldfinger in the golf scene. I think it bests it even.
This just sums up my feeling, right? They took a movie that didn't need to be, that they had to modernize for a modern audience. A story that is not does not translate well for film as is. So they had to do certain things to make it a movie, which isn't a bad thing.
If you had no knowledge of the book, would I don't
know. I think I still feel the same way. My ranking, because when I think about this movie, it's not a bad movie. This isn't me saying this movie is the worst piece of garbage. Like
nobody
on
the planet can say it's a bad movie.
No.
And be taken seriously.
But part of me, as I'm watching this, I feel like a number 4 for me, because I'd rather watch Goldfinger and I'd rather watch From Russia with Love than watch this movie.
Number 4 below From Russia.
Above License to Kill.
Above License to
That's
Kill.
how I feel about it. It's not, it's definitely in that, it's in that top echelon, but to me it's like, there's a part of it where I'm like, it just doesn't hit like a Bond film.
You must
and there's
not have
other
been
reasons for that
right
too.
Mind frame when you watch this.
I'm going to go through my proposition word for word because it'll be quite clear that I was anticipating a McCurdy who, based on his love of Secret Service, would probably just cry through most of this movie. Like McCurdy I know would need a box of tissues to get through this movie.
I didn't honestly, Charlie.
I didn't get that in this one. Type, McCurdy?
I didn't get that in this movie, actually.
Okay.
I think, I don't know why that was, but there's just something about
Nanz,
this. I didn't get that in this movie.
Nanz is at number 1, right? You're at number 1, which is not surprising because Nanz being
I'm a modern movie watcher.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Nanz being our like Bond outsider. And then McCurdy, you and I are Bond insiders. We're going to care more about the character and all that. Whereas Nanz is like, I just want a really good movie. And preferably, it would probably be more modern than otherwise.
Yeah.
And he's not wrong. Most people would probably put this right at the top. But I think what we're going to find is that, I mean, McCurdy, I'm shocked. I'm shocked you're putting it that low. I mean, 4 is relatively low. For a movie like
I'm
this,
just gonna leave this.
It's 4,
this
but like,
session.
look, the other movies that are above it would be Goldfinger and From Russia with Love. Like,
which are, I mean, I'm not
those
going
are
to
also
fight
really
you
good
on
movies
From
and
Russia
kind
with
of
Love. Yeah.
staples.
Yeah.
So,
but that, I mean, those were our golden two forever. Were From Russia with Love and Goldfinger, and then it took GoldenEye, which everybody seems to hate GoldenEye, but you and I, specifically as Bond fans, non-fans, and we'll get into this when we get to something like Skyfall. Non-Bond fans come in and they're like, we really like these movies because they have mass appeal. We like them because we're not Bond fans. I believe that as fans of Bond, fans of the character, you're more likely to enjoy certain movies more than others. And that's partially why you're heavy into OHMSS. Right?
Yeah.
Because you care about the character. Take some average Zoomer today and show them on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and they're like, boring, stupid. You know. So, and this is where like
stupid.
This is where like it's so slow and old and dumb.
Why does he even like her?
But like beyond, what I'm getting at is that there are those of us on the inside and those of us on the outside. And Nan's putting this at number 1, trans versus inside and outside. Insiders and outsiders alike can agree that this movie rocks.
Yeah.
So, but you putting it at 4 is not, like, that's not crazy.
It's disrespectful.
No, it's not disrespectful. I mean, if anything, it's more respectful to knowing, like, okay, where did these movies come from? But I think the part of the problem is that Casino Royale, when it came out, it has this weird problem where it's like, this is the original. This is the first thing. But then you're like, no, it's not, because we had Sean Connery and Roger Moore and all these other people who did these movies. And the movie version of James Bond, not the book version, the movie version had its own ups and downs, which gave us stuff like GoldenEye that was kind of like reverent to that era.
What you're saying is our collective cultural understanding of Bond was changed by 40 years of movies being made.
Well, I think exactly what you're saying, Char, and exactly with what McCurdy's saying. Like, I can more easily put the blockers on to the books and all the other movies.
Yeah.
Like, I don't watch it all on repeat. Like,
but then you get into Casino Royale, and it's like, we're going back to the books and this fresh take. But you're like, yes, I see that. But remember, like, even though that might be the case, like, Fleming's sitting there writing these books, and his books are getting better as he's writing them. At least I would love to imagine they were, because this first book's kind of, it's not adventurous.
Even though this is a reboot, it's still subject to the previous pre-established tropes of Bond, including ordering drinks and saying Bond, James Bond. It's still subject to that. Like, if you're a newbie, there's such a significance placed on that final line, and it's badass to us who already know Bond, but if you're brand new to it, it may not be as significant. And that's kind of the struggle, because like as Bond fans, it's like, that's really exciting. He just said, my name's Bond, James Bond, and then the music swell, it's great. Let me just jump in and transition to my proposition, because that is kind of the crux of mine. We are judging 2 different Bond movies from 2 different universes. That's a first. Officially, that's a first. GoldenEye is the better movie, in my view, based on what we've come to understand a Bond movie to be. Casino Royale isn't a Bond movie so much as it is a Bond book perfectly adapted to the screen. If Casino Royale had been the first film ever made, it would be adorably quaint. It would just be Sean Connery walking in, looking all classy and playing probably Baccarat against Le Chiffre. There wouldn't be all these action scenes and all that, but because we've had 40 years of action movies, a very quaint little book had to be turned into an action movie. And I would say that they did a really good job of that. You're saying that it's...
At some points, I feel like it's a little clunky.
You're saying that it feels like multiple movies mashed together. Next to something like GoldenEye, which is consistent throughout. Would you agree?
Yeah. GoldenEye is consistent.
Yeah. So Casino Royale isn't a Bond movie so much as it's a Bond book perfectly adapted to the screen. And yet at the same time, it relies upon Bondisms established by decades of films that preceded it. And yet we are also to view it as the first in a series. Casino is a masterpiece of modern action spy thrillers starring a man named James Bond, where GoldenEye is a masterpiece of a James Bond movie. Not just a movie, a James Bond movie. And this goes back to our very first real argument of From Russia with Love versus Goldfinger, where From Russia with Love, my whole thing was that it's a classy, legitimate spy drama, and Goldfinger is a ridiculous super spy comic book movie. So here we go again. What's better? The very realistic, real-world spy movie, Casino Royale, or the most Bond movie of all Bond movies, complete with absolutely everything that defines a Bond flick. I compiled that whole list in the GoldenEye episode about why that movie has absolutely everything. GoldenEye is the most well-balanced and all-inclusive Bond movie to date. And I'll summarize quickly by saying that Casino has no Q scene.
Now pay attention, 007.
No money penny.
You've never had me.
No bad Bond girl. No raid on an enemy stronghold, no world-ending stakes, no personal stakes, except, of course, Bond's, testicles. No Bond jokes.
You always did enjoy a good squeeze.
No Bond moments, where it's like Bond's doing something cool and ba-da. No idiosyncratic assassins or heavies. These are all things that have come to define a Bond film versus a spy thriller. GoldenEye is the movie that has everything. Go back and watch that episode. While Casino largely has none of those things. This by no means makes Casino bad in any way. We cannot emphasize that enough. The movie's awesome.
We're talking about how are we ranking something at the top.
Yes.
We're not talking about the bottom. We're not saying this is the worst movie. We're saying we have these really good movies. Now, how do we compare really good movies to a really good movie?
Yes, but the question remains, simply, in the same way that we put Goldfinger above From Russia with Love, do we do the same thing here by putting GoldenEye above Casino Royale? My vote is that I'm going to stand up for GoldenEye because this is where, I'm playing the long game, right?
Way back
when. I do. Well, Natalia as well. But way back when, I was fighting heavily for From Russia with Love. And it's almost like this. It's almost like had we put From Russia with Love above Goldfinger, then appropriately, we would put Casino Royale above GoldenEye. But we didn't. We didn't do that. We put Goldfinger above From Russia with Love. We put the goofy, fun comic book movie, the James Bond movie, above the spy thriller movie. And I kind of see that we should be doing the same thing here because GoldenEye is the epitome of the Bond movie versus a James Bond book adapted perfectly. Those are two very different concepts. Because some people are only into the goofy Bond movies. Some people are all about Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker, and those are the goofy ones. Those are the fun ones. So if you like those, maybe that's at the top of your list. If you like the dark ones, then those like Casino Royale are going to be at the top of your list. But GoldenEye is the most perfectly balanced of all Bond movies, not even based on a book. Its whole tone is a perfect balance of fun, goofy elements along with dark elements without ever falling off that balance beam and being embarrassing and all that. Whereas Casino Royale, all on stark realism. Again, there aren't even Bond jokes. So, McCurdy, you like the movie where Bond cries over his dead wife.
Yeah.
I like the movie where he kills the bad guy and rides off into the sunset with the bikinied babe.
Mm-hmm.
Here's our middle ground where we can both agree. Bond falls in love in a way that isn't forced or nonsensical. She dies in a way we give a shit. Bond doesn't cry about it. He hardens himself to it and is reborn as the James Bond we know and admire. Never let them see you bleed, said Desmond Llewellyn's Q. And goddammit, he was right. You like vulnerable Bond. I don't. I like stoic Bond. I like ice in his veins Bond. But I also like to see how that attribute of his character came about, the origin of his emotional unavailability.
Yeah.
And it's not simply because I want Bond to be a no tears tough guy, even though that's certainly part of it. It's because of the practical utility of adopting such an approach to one of the most trying occupations ever conceived. This is the guy who has to make the hard decisions for the greater good, the bigger picture, as M puts it. I like Bond the same way I like Science Officer Spock in the original Star Trek. He's good at his job because he has learned to stifle his emotions so that they do not get him killed. Even in the most dire of situations, he can be trusted to make the right choice. I may not like vulnerable Bond going forward, but seeing as the entire purpose of this story is seeing the death of vulnerable Bond and the birth of 007 as we know him, this movie tells that story quite well. So overall, GoldenEye is an older James Bond who is already established as the ice in his veins guy who never gets emotionally involved. And that whole story is about his relevance as, in the wake of the Cold War and all that, versus seeing that same guy starting out. Bond is a cold bastard from the beginning.
I would ask you if you could remain emotionally detached. But I don't think that's your problem, is it, Bond?
No.
But the whole essence of Casino Royale is that it's not like he's emotionally available and then gets burned. He's emotionally unavailable, then allows his, quote, cold heart to be melted.
How's our girl? Melted your cold heart yet?
For the sake of Vesper, considers giving up his whole career and just sailing around the world with the woman he loves. And because he gave in to that temptation to live a normal life and then gets burned, it hardens him all the more and just solidifies like, this is your life. You are a servant to Her Majesty. And I think that's fantastic. In my view, these movies have to go head to head because of how much they have to say about Bond, the character. One, a guy just starting out on his career, trying to establish himself, trying to prove himself, but simultaneously being tempted to quit. The other, a guy at the end of his career, essentially trying to showcase that he's still relevant.
You're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur. A relic of the Cold War.
But amongst those two, not only is GoldenEye the more like perfectly balanced movie between the fun stuff and the serious stuff, whereas Casino is just the serious stuff, but GoldenEye has all of the film elements that just stacked upon each other for 40 years until we got to GoldenEye where they all are there.
Well, this is why I always put Her Majesty's Secret Service up there, because that was a movie that dealt specifically with Bond as a person. It wasn't the external story, which was more or less like the fun adventure that we went to go see. There, like when I look at this list, there's only a few handful of movies that really kind of deal with that. And to me, those are the movies that go up closer to the top. The movies that don't really do that as much, there are some that are up the top that they don't do it as much. For me, like Goldfinger or Dr. No, like we're not really talking more about the character because we were still establishing the character. Her Majesty's Secret Service is about a guy who's questioning if he wants to still do this, and then decides, I'm going to leave the organization. Turns out he can't leave the organization because everything that he's a part of, the world that he's a part of, will bring him back in no matter what, and he's stuck doing the thing that he has to do for the rest of his life, and that's save the world and be James Bond.
If it was just this movie, if it was Casino Royale versus Secret Service, the obvious winner would be Casino Royale, because
it's the same theme. It's just, it's more perfected.
Yeah, here's a guy who's considering leaving because he maybe has a shot at normality. Because often James Bond has to go back to, no, sorry, Moneypenny, I'm an outlier. So far as society goes, I'm an outlier. I'll never have a normal home life. I defend the walls of society so the rest of you can have a normal life. But occasionally he is tempted to join normality. And as you would point out, that was the theme of Secret Service was maybe I can quit, maybe I can get married and have some kids and get a job working at a gas station or whatever.
I love you.
You love me.
Enough to quit and float around the world with you until one of us has to find an honest job. We'll have to find something else to do. But I think that's going to have to be you because I have no idea what an honest job is.
Fantastic. And in Secret Service, that's a Bond that's been in for a while and he's like getting tired of it. And in Casino, he's like just getting in and he's like, maybe this isn't right for me. Because for me, he's not cold-blooded yet. Like he feels that first kill.
Made you feel it, did he?
He even feels the kills of... He feels those guys too. He needs like a decompression moment in the bathroom where he chugs the whiskey. So like he's still like figuring it out, and he's even a little too eager to get into it, breaking into M's office and all that. So I think that's all more interesting.
That first kill he feels, but don't forget that's the point of showcasing the second kill in the prologue. Remember, you need a body count in order to become a 00.
And it takes 2.
So knowing his time has come, the bent station chief is about to tell James that the second kill is easier, and that's the whole joke of...
Yes. Considerably.
Including the nice little editing touch of flash framing pictures of this man's family, showing just how cold-blooded this kill really is. Where others might show mercy for the sake of this man's family, Bond don't give a when it comes to following orders. Bond beat up an entire embassy and killed a bomb maker with no remorse. Bond stabbed Demetrius with no remorse. Bond beat up and killed another bomb maker with no remorse. Bond is directly responsible for Demetrius's wife Solange's horrific torture and murder, yet has no remorse. It isn't until we get to the Ugandans that Bond has his moment of looking at the man in the mirror, but then he puts all that away and goes right back to the game. However, it all pays off in the shower scene with Vesper, because she's a shining example of someone who isn't like Bond. She's just a normie, the very brand of person that James Bond is typically working so hard to protect from the horrors of that which lies beyond the walls of society. The desensitized and brainwashed soy boys would say that she's not a strong character or whatever because she doesn't take part in the fight, you know, doing cartwheels and kickflips, pushing Bond aside and handling these two guys on her own. Instead, it's realistic and firmly within her character, and she does help. And then she's haunted by it, appropriately so, and it shows that she has a soul. It reflects her humanity, and it shows Bond's constant need to hide his own. But in order to help her, he lets it back out just a little bit, and it's great.
It's like there's blood on my hands. It's not coming off.
Yeah, I see.
And the lesson here is that body counts get easier over time. And that's precisely what informs the character of James Bond down the road. Only here, we are at the beginning of that journey where he might still have time to get out before it's too late. And that's Vesper's effect on him, is Vesper's like...
It doesn't bother you, killing those people?
I wouldn't be very good at my job if it did.
I don't believe you. You've got a choice, you know. Just because you've done something doesn't mean you have to keep doing it.
Just because you've taken a life, if you take a life, do you know what you get? Odds are you won't like what it is. That's a heavy theme through the whole movie, is this idea of getting out while you still have a bit of your soul. Because fast forward to GoldenEye, where on the beach, you have these two beach scenes that mirror each other.
The GoldenEye one's not good.
Okay, f*** you. They mirror each other because in the casino beach scene, the whole thing is, maybe I can get out now while I still have a bit of my soul. I've only killed a handful of people. I can get out and repent. I can repent to Martine Campbell, and I will be redeemed, and I can be with my babe.
Like you said, you do what I do for too long, and there won't be any soul left to salvage. I'm leaving with what little I have left.
By contrast with GoldenEye, the idea is I'm too far gone. I am solidified in my role as a 00 and a protector of humanity, and this normal woman is looking him in the face saying,
"How can you act like this? How can you be so cold?"
It's what keeps me alive.
And he's like, bitch, it's what keeps me alive. And he ain't lying. By being this cold killer, he doesn't have to deal with guilt, and it keeps him objective. I mean, again, think about what would have happened if he had said to the station chief, you know what, you do have a family, I'm going to spare you. The bent section chief would have just blown him away, and it keeps him surviving from one mission to the other as he's done for 20 odd missions that we've watched him do. Those two beach scenes mirror each other perfectly. And they kind of mirror the frustration of placing this movie in the list because they are both very true to this character, but one towards the end of his career and one at the very beginning of his career, and kind of this temptation in the beginning to get out before he turns into the Pierce Brosnan James Bond of GoldenEye.
I mean, Eva Green's death is what turns him into that.
Yes, and that's why it's awesome.
That's why this movie should be number one.
That's why this movie should contend for number one. But when it comes to the actual movies themselves, it becomes that question of like, what is your cup of tea? And your cup of tea is probably more tied up in the action, specifically the action. But when it comes to the character, it's that whole thing of like, okay, this guy going through this romance where he's tempted to get away from the game, or this guy that's been in the game forever. Meanwhile, he's caught up in this movie that has everything tied to it that we know to be pieces of a Bond movie based off of 40 years of making Bond movies. So let me go through that list real quick.
Yeah,
this goes back to GoldenEye.
Bond movies.
This goes back to GoldenEye. The movie GoldenEye has everything, and not only does it have everything,
Casino's not missing it, but they're not. Each individual Bond movie trope isn't like flashing out.
Nanz, the list of these things in GoldenEye has now become a list of anti-things in Casino. When I first read the list, it was, hey, GoldenEye has all these things. Now I'm going to read the list again. It's Casino doesn't have any of these things. Okay, here we go. We don't have Q and we don't have Moneypenny, even though I do kind of get the sense that the blonde woman at the Ocean Club or whatever, she kind of feels like the perfect Moneypenny if they would have had a Moneypenny in that movie. Like, she looks like a compliment to Daniel Craig specifically. She probably is too attractive, but she looks like she would be the perfect wife boo. You know, incredible prologue that is significantly significant to the overall pre and post Cold War story. Really cool prologue.
Does Bond have to be Cold War related?
Well, that's the question of GoldenEye. This story was initially part of the Cold War. It doesn't have to be, but that's because GoldenEye already settled that question. So it's almost like it relies on GoldenEye. Anyway, my point there being, though, that technically the prologue in this movie is wasted. It's fantastic. We finally get to see Bond become a 00, but it doesn't weigh in on the end of the story.
Maybe not the end, but it weighs in on his character throughout the story.
Yes, it does. I do not disagree with you. But in the past, we've defined a wasted prologue as one that doesn't weigh in on the rest of the movie. This one doesn't weigh in on the rest of the movie, other than he becomes a 00, which is awesome. Seeing him become a 00 for the first time is great. But the movie isn't about him becoming a 00 so much as it's like
becoming a 00 and then wrestling with what comes with being a 00.
Yeah.
And dealing with it.
Versus the prologue of GoldenEye, which is setting up his whole story with Alec. Alec being an evil version of 007.
It's a great pre-title sequence.
Yeah.
I would say they're both great pre-title.
I agree with you. But think of it this way. If you got rid of the pre-title sequence on GoldenEye, the rest of the movie would suffer from a lot of confusion. Whereas if you got rid of Casinos, you'd miss out on a really good character scene, but it wouldn't really affect the overall plot. I would kind of argue that there aren't necessarily personal stakes or world-ending stakes. You could maybe say that some of this is personal for Bond, but not really. Even with Vesper, it's not the same kind of personal stakes.
For GoldenEye, are there world-ending stakes? Because it almost seems like Alec Trevelyan's focus is just the money.
It doesn't matter. It's
global financial meltdown.
The United Kingdom will re-enter the Stone Age. A worldwide financial meltdown.
It would devastate the world.
So he's not just like holding ransom. He's like messing up the whole system.
There's a personal, and I would argue that
Definitely
Casino Royale
stakes.
has a personal stakes in towards the end of the film with Vesper.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really change until we get to the third movie in this movie.
Yeah.
Because the second movie is not his personal stakes. He's there to do this mission. And there might be a little bit of, it's all driven by his ego where he's like, that motherfucker, I'm going to get him.
Here's where I disagree, where it's like, yes, it is personal between him and Vesper, but then it turns out that she betrayed him, so suddenly it reverts back to not being personal.
Allow me.
That's what's personal about it, is that she betrayed him, though. That's what's personal about it.
But had Vesper not been the traitor, then I would agree with you that it's personal that the bad guys would kill her. But once she betrays him, she's just another bad guy, and suddenly the personal stuff is removed.
Yeah.
Well, I would say the same sort of thing with Alec. Like, he doesn't even know Alec is still alive, right? So it's not necessarily personal, minus they know each other from a previous life.
It goes from vague bad guy, impersonal, to personal the moment that it's this ally of his from the past who ends up being the bad guy.
I trusted you, Alec. Trust.
So I'm saying there's like an inversion. It's like in GoldenEye, it's impersonal to personal, whereas in Casino, it's personal to impersonal by the end. Bond is straight up like, the bitch is dead.
If you do need time.
Why should I need more time? Job's done. The bitch is dead.
He makes it impersonal versus that moment of, for England, James? No, for me, motherfucker.
Avenging Alec Trevelyan will not bring him back.
You didn't get him killed.
Neither did you. Don't make it personal.
Never. For me.
Maybe people watching will be like, dude, it's all the same. No, it's not.
I get where you're going.
It's different.
Move on. Let's go.
Okay, moving
next
on.
Point.
What's the next point?
Sexually suggestive female henchman name, Miss Onatop, which briefly you get Stephanie Broadchest, which is hilarious.
And you're Miss Stephanie Broadchest, yeah.
I am not.
You're gonna have to trust me on this.
They could have said small bone, right? They could have said small bone. No gadgets to speak of whatsoever. Not even Q. No baccarat. Of course, we had to replace it with poker because poker was big at the time.
You could argue, though, that poker's a definitely better game than baccarat for person on person, reading the other person and playing their hand versus
not necessarily
yours.
Not necessarily reading somebody. Baccarat, you are reading the other person. But I would agree with you so far as if you're going to prove that you're a mathematical genius,
A bit of a mathematical genius, and like to prove it by playing poker.
then different hands being better than others
I have 2 pair, and you have a 17.4% chance of making you straight.
is superior to baccarat, where you're just trying to get as close to 9 as possible. It's like blackjack
Yeah, it's
versus
like
poker,
21.
right?
Like,
yeah.
And more people can try to get to 21 than can do the math on the likelihood of all these different hands in poker and the likelihood that they have it versus opponents.
No bad guy layer, no assault on a bad guy layer, no commandos to have an assault on the bad guy layer, no goofy element of James Bond being caught hooking up at the end. Fitting bad guy deaths don't even weigh in because now we're just like, and that's almost another point towards like, this isn't necessarily a Bond movie. This is just like a modern spy movie where that's not even an element.
Maybe Bond or Mr. White could be really good at throwing playing cards and hits Lashik in the eyeball or something.
Yeah, there you go. I feel compelled to reiterate that I'm not saying Casino should have any of these things. In fact, it's a really good thing that it doesn't. What I am saying is that GoldenEye does have these things, and it makes it a very complete Bond film, as determined by how Bond films evolved over decades. For example, anybody out there saying, well, Q wasn't in the book, guess what? Q wasn't in any of the books. He came about entirely through the adaptation to the screen. But can you imagine the world of James Bond without Q?
If it hadn't been for Q, Branch, you'd have been dead long ago.
My Bond list is you've got Bond, and he's great in both. You got a Bond girl. We get pretty good Bond girls in both. I'd argue Eva's better. Villain, they're great in both. Gadgets, I would say no gadgets is better than silly gadgets. Not that GoldenEye has silly gadgets.
Adds to a serious Bond movie. We've talked about that a million times. Again, that weighs in on Bond movie versus good movie. Good movie versus good Bond movie.
These are all Bond movie things. Like, and also like opening and action scenes, I would argue casinos are better. And for me, again, like the miniature work kind of brings GoldenEye down, which it should, in your guys' eyes, it wouldn't. So
in my view, it doesn't.
Songs throughout, title sequence songs, I would say Casino definitely wins there.
Pause for that. I don't give a what Scott says. I mean, I'm always going to have a Chris Cornell bias because Chris Cornell is the man. But You Know My Name is the perfect James Bond song. So far as the lyrics are all about the man. It pumps you the up. I mean, that final of Daniel Craig walking up and introducing himself for the first time as the song is crescendoing. I am fucking jacked and ready to go. Full stop.
We don't get the theme, the Bond theme, until the very end, which is like he has become Bond, and then they play the Bond theme.
Yeah.
They really withhold that.
Which is appropriate.
Also, the music, like in GoldenEye, the car chase scene, immediately post-title sequence, the music there is like weird. The music choices in GoldenEye are strange. That car chase scene's not bad, or at least it's fun. But the Bond car, the Beamer, literally does nothing in the movie. At least we get a small chase with the Bond. Like, I love cars.
What is it with you and moving vehicles?
Getting a bit of a chasing. Yeah. In Casino, like.
What did you think of Bond's Ford in this?
Well, you definitely notice, along with Sony, Ford has a big involvement. I think at that point they own Range Rover, Aston Martin. That's why all these cars are in there. And you see Goldfinger driving the Range Rover at the resort.
Caught it. You
Range
caught
Rover
the
that Bond
Goldfinger
crashes.
reference.
Oh, for sure.
It could only be a Goldfinger reference that a somewhat heavy-set golf cap wearing Germanic dude with a gold Range Rover bugs Bond about whether or not he's going to valet his car, and then Bond goes and messes it up.
Range Rover, Rolls Royce.
What a subtle but brilliant Goldfinger reference.
We get the DB5, we get the DBS, we get a short chase scene. So they're a bit more involved than the so-called BMW Bond car in GoldenEye, but
yeah.
I mean, M even says in the M scene, no, not M, Q.
Behind the headlights, Stinger missiles.
Which comes into play in a later movie, but the car does nothing in GoldenEye.
Yeah.
They drive it in Cuba for a second. But so, I mean, I would argue these are all the Bond things that I think a Bond movie needs to have, and Casino has them all. Minus gadgets, I guess. I don't know. You get a defibrillator, but...
What I would say about GoldenEye is that GoldenEye is the product of decades of Bond films. All these tropes that came about not from the books, but from the films. Because in the books, you don't have an assault on a bad guy layer every book. But you start to have that in the movies because the movies start to have these specific expectations that audiences are looking for. Because most
movie's boring. We need a layer invasion.
Most audiences haven't read the books. So the movies start to stack up these tropes. All of those stacked tropes, they crescendo with GoldenEye. GoldenEye is the epitome of the Bond film. The most well-balanced Bond film. Versus Casino Royale, the best adaptation of a Bond novel to date. Those are two different things. And that's where, again, I was expecting to almost fight McCurdy for the top spot because I thought McCurdy was going to love this movie based on Secret Service.
Charlie, I basically agree with you. I'm pretty much on board with you where your kind of stance is at. My grievances really have to do with this doesn't quite feel like a Bond movie. He doesn't even sleep with any women in this movie. I think he sleeps with Eva Green at the very end of it.
He has a chick body count of 1, and it is
He
just
doesn't even
Vesper.
sleep with the other girl.
No.
And they don't even they could have pulled that card. That would have been cool.
It makes more sense, though, for the love story, right?
No,
where
no,
OHMSS doesn't make sense where he goes to that place and bangs all the chicks.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make sense here.
You would
He
think
hasn't
you were
met Eva Green
correct,
yet.
but he hasn't met Eva yet. But here's the thing, McCurdy and Nanz. Here's the thing. Bond pulls off the ultimate mission over pussy move because, again, as I've said before, James Bond is a hunter.
Apparently, he's on the last flight to Miami.
Can I get a bottle of chilled Bollinger GoldenEye? And the beluga caviar?
With everything?
Yes, with everything.
And would that be for 2, sir?
What?
For 2?
No, for 1.
Because, again, everybody's characterization of James Bond is that he's just a pussy hound. And my counter to that is that his focus is always on the mission and women are a byproduct. Again, I always use the term he's a hunter. Him being a manly man means that women are drawn to him. Therefore, his focus is always on the kill versus his focus is being on getting laid because getting laid is easy for Bond. The kill is what's more exciting. And then women are a byproduct of his success in the kill.
I get that you're applauding it, but going back to like the very first Bond film, he wouldn't pull that. Like that's just... It seems slightly out of character because in previous iterations that are James Bond, as we know James Bond,
Bond would have made time.
Bond would have been like, we got time.
I don't know.
Come on. I would be more impressed.
He got what he needed out of her.
I don't care.
There was no need for pumping of additional information. He needed to get to
McCurdy's
Miami
so
right then and there.
He's so right.
If they basically kind of took what this movie was and had written it maybe 10 years prior, he would have already been in bed with her, and then he'd have left from being in bed with her. Like those are the kinds of choices where I feel like
they're just
missing the mark.
Get to sleep with that lady.
I am.
He's not wrong though. Roger Moore would have been like, he's already in bed and he's questioning her in bed.
It would have been post-coital questioning, not pre.
Yeah.
Do you think Bond was a virgin?
No.
I'm not saying that.
No, maybe. No. Hang on. Bond was a virgin so far as murder was concerned, right? And as you mentioned, Nanz, after he kills that first guy,
you got to pop two cherries to become a double O. Each O represents a cherry.
Remember, he made you feel it, right? He made you feel it. And Bond's like, I just murdered a man. I feel bad. Maybe Bond was a virgin.
That's some weird headcanon.
And Eva Green was his first. And he had
who was his second then?
Well, the second is much easier. To the murdered station chief's point, the second is much easier. But that first one takes a toll.
Yeah, the more people you kill, the more women you pump for information, the easier it gets.
The easier it gets, and the more your soul dwindles.
We're looking at a virginal blonde Bond. He's still learning the ropes.
I'm just saying, like, they could have written it in a way where when we cut to his bungalow, he's already slept with her. I'm not saying we need to accentuate that scene. I'm just saying
you're talking choices, filmmaking choices.
Some of the filmmaking and writing choices seem a little off, and they definitely seem purposely like we're not making a Bond movie, we're making a spy movie that just so happens to have James Bond in it. And those are the kinds of choices where I feel like I'm like, huh.
Let's talk about the one through line between GoldenEye and Casino, which is M, Judy Dench.
She's the only person we get that carries over?
Yes. The two introductions of M are perfect. The one is the...
You were saying?
No, I was just...
Good. Because if I want sarcasm, Mr. Tanner, I'll talk to my children, thank you very much.
The other one is...
Who the hell do they think they are? I report to the Prime Minister, and even he's smart enough not to ask me what we do. Have you ever seen such a bunch of self-righteous, arse-covering prigs? They don't care what we do, they care what we get photographed doing. And how the hell could Bond be so stupid? I give him 00 status and he celebrates by shooting up an embassy. Is the man deranged? And where the hell is he? In the old days, if an agent did something that embarrassing, he'd have the good sense to defect. Christ, I miss the Cold War.
Followed up by perfect dialogue scenes between Bond and M that perfectly set up the two different stories. GoldenEye, accounting, bean counters versus instincts, right, of an older James Bond.
You don't like me, Bond. You don't like my methods. You think I'm an accountant. A bean counter, more interested in my numbers than your instincts.
The thought had occurred to me.
If you think for one moment I don't have the balls to send a man out to die, your instincts are dead wrong.
Casino, whom to trust, the big picture and knowing one's place.
This may be too much for a blunt instrument to understand, but arrogance and self-awareness seldom go hand in hand.
So you want me to be half monk, half hitman?
Any thug can kill. I want you to take your ego out of the equation and to judge the situation dispassionately. I have to know I can trust you, and that you know who to trust. You don't trust anyone, do you, James?
No.
Then you've learnt your lesson.
When it comes down to it, Judi Dench rocks it in both instances, right? And you go back and you watch not just her introduction scene, but then her first scene with Bond, and both of those scenes perfectly complement their respective films. And then at the heart of it is Judi Dench, who is just great. There is a reason why Martin Campbell, may he be praised, cast her twice. When you're watching certain action sequences, it's kind of funny that you can always tell the difference between Daniel Craig and a stunt guy, because the stunt guys run like a normal person, and then Daniel Craig, like, his run is goofy.
Is it like Tom Cruise?
Like, this is what he runs like.
Daniel
He's
Craig
very
has
weird.
the Tom Cruise run.
But even goofier. He's like a jogger. He's like a jogger. Like he's kind of odd.
I mean, I could tell you of other little dumb things that I noticed this time around watching Casino Royale that I don't think is going to change your mind, but it's always like...
Yeah, mention it.
Okay, so a couple things that I noticed as I'm watching the movie that I'm like, what? The opening scene with Bond, that whole sequence is great, but in that sequence explains that character because he's a blunt instrument and he's like barging through doors where the other guy's all smooth and you know, parkours through everything, and Bond's just bursting in through things because it shows his character. Still, it's a great, fun action sequence. I think it's the most memorable action sequence in the whole movie. That leads him to getting the phone, and also that the fact that he kills the guy and, like, it's all over the news.
We wanted to question him, not to kill him.
He goes back and M's all
he
upset
tells
about
the guy
it.
he wants him alive, and then he kills him.
So there's that. And then he gets the phone. He gets the information from the phone to kind of figure out, okay, well, where did this come from? He goes to Nassau. Because we have to be like, well, let's go to a familiar location from Bond. So we'll go to the Thunderball location. So we go to Nassau. We go to the Bahamas.
They should have gone to Jamaica, dude.
They should have gone to Jamaica. But, so they go to this place. Then he's like, okay, I go investigate in the surveillance room. All right, I have the phone from the dude who sent the text message, right? He's like, oh, I'll look at the history from the phone because I looked up the information at what exact time and the location. Oh, I don't know the quite exact location. I just know it's at this specific beach resort. Great.
It happens to be caught on camera.
It just so happens to be at the same time at the entranceway. That's super convenient.
He gets out of the car and looks
super
at
convenient.
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually pretty lax on stuff like that. It would have been really boring to watch Bond go through a dozen DVDs to find the right camera in the right room at the right time. And what would have happened if Demetrius would have been taking a at that moment or whatever, you know, but that's just movie stuff at that point. They're just cutting a corner so they can move the story along. But I see what you mean.
It doesn't quite make sense in reality. He figures that out, finds who that guy is.
Mr. Demetrius.
Tries to sleep with that guy's wife, follows that guy back to Miami, finds out that that guy has something that he's going to give another dude, follows that other dude to the airport to where he see Richard Branson, and then hell, like, the fact that he finds out what ellipses means. It's literally just the key code to get into the airplane. That's it. That's all it is.
All ellipses was to get past one door.
Yeah, that's it. It just feels so like anticlimactic where he gets there and he's like, oh, that's the code. And then he finds the airplane and then the guy... And then we find out that the scene way back before this, Le Chiffre was already saying, I want to put a stock option short.
Short another million shares of Skyfleet stock.
Which, for the layman's, the simplest version is, instead of investing in something to say, oh, it's probably going to go up, I want to put more money into it, you're basically betting against it. Like, if you've seen the movie The Big Short, you're just saying, like, I'm betting against the market that it's actually going to go down. It's not going to go up.
Hey, there's a bubble.
How do you know?
Trust me, call Venet. Buy 50 million in swaps on the MBS.
Sir, you must know you're betting against the market. No one expects this stock to go anywhere but up.
I didn't understand that until probably in the last 2 years after, you know, everything with Wall Street Bets and the GameStop fiasco and all that stuff. Like, that was a really great explanation as to what was going on with the airplane and all that stuff, because I didn't understand.
We needed a little Mathis insert of, when he's shorting this airline, it means
yeah. We need Margot Robbie.
There's 120 million on the table.
115 million in the pot.
So in that moment, the guys are like, are you sure you want to do that? Like, everyone's saying the stock's going to go up, presumably because they're making this new airplane and it's coming out. And so everyone's going to buy stock in that company because they're making this great airplane. But he's like, no, much like Tomorrow Never Dies, he's using a terrorist attack to try to predict his own future so he can use that for his own gain.
We're going to bomb all these GameStop so that GameStop stock goes down.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
God, we're talking about
Yes.
GameStop again. Change the subject.
Yes.
Somebody change the subject.
Just my point really is that you can still condense that sequence down to, like, you can cut out more of the Nassau, the middle part of that, and you don't necessarily need, because the movie's 2 hours and 30 minutes long. You don't need all of those breadcrumbs to get to the, oh, he wanted to bomb the plane, because if you bomb the plane, then you would have made all that money back from the short. That was the whole point of that whole thing. My point is just, we were led to this thing with the ellipses, and it feels like you could have taken one of these sequences out and you tighten the movie up just a little bit. And I would have been like, oh, okay.
Yeah. You need the airplane scene.
No, the airplane part is important, but the airplane is like, it's literally like we were talking about. They took the book, and in the book, it was some other thing. And they're like, well, let's expand on that. Let's make that a part of the story so that we have more to show for this movie, because our story isn't that much. The movie is basically trying to bend over backwards to like make this relevant.
We have to motivate Le Chiffre's not having money because, again, before in the book, it was like his cat houses, there was a new law passed, so now he's not making money. So now he owes money to his overlords, so he's got to make money. And then they modernize it where it's like, how about we do like a stock market play, blah, blah, blah. He needs $100 million.
The aftermath scene, because that's what most of this movies are, is there's always something happens, there's an aftermath scene, they talk about it, the aftermath scene leads us to something else.
When they analysed the stock market after 9/11, the CIA discovered a massive shorting of airline stocks. When the stocks hit bottom on 9/12, somebody made a fortune. The same thing happened this morning with Skyfleet stock, or was supposed to.
So they figure out pretty quickly, like, oh, Le Chiffre was the one who did it.
Yeah, we're blaming 9/11 on Le Chiffre. It was the French. We always knew it was the French. The fucking freedom fries were legitimated. The whole first half of the movie is legitimizing why we go to Casino Royale. Your point, McCurdy, is why do we have to do any of that? Why can't we just go straight to Casino Royale?
Yeah.
Why are we fucking about? And the Nances of the world go, well, because we want to have these kick-ass action scenes. And he's not wrong in that the free running scene and the airport scene are tremendous action scenes. But to your point, McCurdy, those action scenes lend to this feeling of watching 3 different movies in succession.
This is why I probably like GoldenEye more, is because we don't have weird sequences that don't lead to, I'm not saying they don't lead anywhere, but it's like, it's throughout the movie. Like, I feel like every sequence leads to something.
So I certainly agree with you so far as GoldenEye has a singularly focused plot and every scene and sequence is there to serve that plot. And there really isn't anything that could be removed. You really need all of it unless you're Nanz and you don't like the beach scene. Whereas with Casino, there are several scenes that you really don't need, and the movie could easily have been made to fit within 2 hours if for some reason the filmmakers really needed to do so. Where I don't agree with you goes back to when we talked about the gypsy scene in From Russia with Love, where you said it's not necessary, but we both agree it is enjoyable. For me, the superfluous scenes are what make this film so enjoyable. But if we're comparing these two, GoldenEye manages to do both at once. Super focused story that is all killer, no filler. For those familiar with the Casino book, half of this movie is filler, but goddamn if it isn't some of the best filler ever produced. One of the more confusing elements is, to your point, McCurdy, where it's like, this movie's flawless, but some things are kind of odd. There's that scene where they all take a break, right, from the game. And then Bond goes to see Le Chiffre. He gets that package, the parcel, and he's in the elevator with Vesper, and he's tracking Le Chiffre, and he can hear him because he's got the bug in his, you know, thing. And yet he doesn't register as having heard any kind of disturbance until the girlfriend yells. But then we hear breathing in his ear before the bodyguard shoots at him. It would have been much better if it was established that based on hearing him through the bug, Bond was coming to his floor of the hotel to rescue him, right? Like, it's like, oh God, Le Chiffre is being attacked by somebody. Let's go rescue him. But instead, it's like, why was Bond there in the first place? Why did he go seeking out Le Chiffre? What was he going to do? Because once he shows up, it's like, okay, now we have to defend ourselves from the Ugandans. But what was Bond doing there in the first place? Why did he go to his place with a gun? Was he going to kill Le Chiffre? No, of course he wasn't going to do that. So why was he there?
I'd never even thought of that.
It would have been better if it would have been like, Mathis is like, dude, somebody's attacking Le Chiffre. I can hear it on the bug. You got to get down there now. And Bond's like, oh God, we got to go defend Le Chiffre. That would have been like a reverse Red Grant moment where it's like, make sure Le Chiffre doesn't get killed so we can finish the game.
Yeah.
Or because like at the end of the day, they need Le Chiffre alive, right? M would want Le Chiffre alive. So it's like Le Chiffre is being attacked by the Ugandans. We got to go defend him. Instead, it's like Bond just shows up.
Because the thing isn't an audio device, right? It's just a tracker
no, it is.
To know where he is.
When the Ugandan sees the earpiece in Bond's ear, you can hear breathing in Bond's ear.
Anyway, your point is it's better if there's a reason for Bond to go. He heard or saw something via the tracker that prompts him to go up there.
We know you hate Lashif, but you got to get down there and save this asshole's life. But instead, Bond just happens to be there for no reason.
Yeah, this movie, again, it's strong story. Just the plot is all over the place.
As usual, none of these movies are perfect.
And it's not just me being dumb.
They're a little confusing.
And to concede a little bit, MI6 knows it's Lashif before the poker game, right? So then it's almost like, why do the whole poker thing? Why not just swoop in and grab Lashif?
It's something that to enjoy the movie properly, it's like the Austin Powers thing of just like, don't think about it too much and just enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
But Vesper's the only one who just calls it out, where she's like, hey,
I got the impression we were risking millions of dollars and hundreds of lives on a game of luck.
if you lose, we'll have directly financed terrorism. And that's where it's like, this whole scheme is a terrible idea. Why are we doing this? And in the book, and again, I'm only appealing to the book because in the book, they kind of address this where it's like, we don't want to just defeat Lashif. We want to humiliate the Soviets.
The whole reason why these Bond books became popular is because the Cold War was ramped up. Or I shouldn't say ramped up. The Cold War became a thing. U.S. and Russia were up against each other.
That was the whole thing. We want to humiliate them. And Bond hints at that when he says,
Do you want a clean kill or do you want to send a message?
And then M's like, no.
We want him alive. The Chiffre doesn't have 100 million to lose.
We have to beat him at his own game because only then will he be desperate enough to turn.
We can't let him win this game. If he loses, he'll have nowhere to run. We'll give him sanctuary in return for everything he knows.
That doesn't make sense, though, Em.
It's like, why play the bad guy's game? Why negotiate with terrorists?
Why didn't the CIA just swoop in and Black Hood the guy and take him back to Langley and torture him?
When Felix Leiter stops him after he loses and before he buys back in, I'm curious what would have happened from there if the movie continued from that point. If Felix didn't stop Bond.
Yeah, Bond's like, oh, my winning or losing is irrelevant. I'll just go grab the guy.
Listen, I'm bleeding chips. I'm not gonna last much longer. You have a better chance, I'll stake you. I'm saying I'll give you the money to keep going. Just one thing, if you pull it off, the CIA bring him in.
Because it's like, okay, here's your options. So Lashif has set up this game. So we're going to send in our best gambler, James Bond, who will maybe beat him, maybe not. I mean, it literally, to Vesper's point, is literally a game of chance. Versus, the guy's already desperate enough. So why aren't you just swooping in and picking him up and saying, hey, we'll protect you from the Ugandans and everybody else coming to chop your head off with a machete if you will give us the information you have? Why don't they do that right away? What is the motivation to have out this whole poker game? Because again, to reiterate, in the book you're holding up, the whole thing was we want to humiliate the communists. But with this, we don't have the communists. So they say in like one scene, they're like, we're going to do this because if he loses, he'll be desperate enough to help us out. But if you extract him before he can play the game, he's not there to make the money back, thereby making him desperate enough to give in to whatever you're demanding of him. Like, it doesn't make sense. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense why they go ahead with the whole gambling thing, because if they just pick up Lashif before the game even takes place, he can't make the money, thereby making him desperate enough to give you all the information you want. I don't explain it to me. It doesn't make sense.
Because again, the whole thing is this. The whole thing is
we need what's in Lashif's head. We don't just want to kill him. So we need to put him in a position of desperation so that he will give us that information. But the guy's already desperate. He's already desperate. So why wouldn't he, if you picked him up before the game even started and gave him a deal, it sounds like he would already take the deal.
Put Lashif in that chair and have M whack his balls.
Yeah, but the point is you don't even need to do that because he'd already be like, these Ugandans are going to kill me. So here's everything you need to know about them.
Yeah.
It's still a great movie, and
you know what it is? No, you know what, Nanz? This is what it is that I know sometimes we talk about these movies, and I think at one point we were talking about the difference between story and plot, right? What Charlie mentions about all the things about what makes this movie great, because this is giving reason behind why Bond acts the way he does. That's what most of the point of this movie is. Like they literally are like, we're not going to put the Bond theme in the movie, which I think is a bad call in my opinion, but they weren't going to put it throughout the movie until the very end, till he said his name is like, my name's Bond, James Bond. So that's the whole point of this movie, is just being the proto James Bond movie.
Becoming Bond,
right? Great story. Plot wise, it's kind of like I'm holding on to this thing because it's sacred, but we all know that this is a TV movie. This isn't a big action movie. So we have to make it into a big action movie. Whereas like things like Dr. No or Goldfinger or these other movies, they work better as full-length movies. Like I think For Russia with Love works better as a full-length movie because there's a lot more sightseeing, there's a lot more things happening. It's not just all contained in this one room. And it kind of just, to me, goes to show that Ian Fleming got better with his writing, came up with better stories, had better plot ideas as he was writing these books. And they're just sticking to this novel where he was like, oh, I had this dream where I'd play a German officer and wipe him out. My point is, like, Charlie's points are valid about, what's the story or the other things that are about this movie that are great. Yes, those are valid points. I just think the plot for this movie is kind of slow, and some of it's like it's really easy to question, especially in this day and age. Doesn't matter if it's Baccarat or Texas Hold'em to me.
I don't feel the length on Casino.
I feel it.
GoldenEye is like a good 15 minutes shorter, and that feels longer to me.
I disagree. I feel like there are so many scenes where there's nothing happening. It's just we don't have any dialogue. It's a lot of people looking at each other. It's a lot of Bond. We kind of have to figure out what he's doing, but there's so much of it that I feel like it slows the movie down, where you can still have that. It's just, I think they could have, again, like I said before, I think they could have cut a little bit of that beginning part up a little bit. It would have to come from the writing. He doesn't have to say much to anybody. He's doing his investigating thing. He's following somebody. He goes from one spot to the other with very little dialogue. Like even the opening sequence is like, I get it. Le Chiffre is gambling these funds. He's literally betting. Those are one of the themes of the movie. The movie is playing a lot about gambling and gambling your life. And that's what the movie ends up being, is about it being in a casino, betting. But there's something to be said about it. It's just like, it feels slightly off. It just feels like it's missing a couple ingredients that would make this feel more like a Bond film. And I feel like it's so holding on to the book that it's fighting between, are we trying to be the Bond film or are we trying to make this book? And sometimes it can't quite decide. Luckily, the writers are smart enough to put like some really interesting story stuff in there, specifically with Eva Green and Daniel Craig's character and all that stuff works really well. But it just, to me, it feels like it's at odds with each other. Whereas GoldenEye never feels like that.
On top of what you just said about a heavy theme of the movie being gambling, on top of that is this interesting take on the romance between Bond and Vesper, which is in itself a poker game. And they say that explicitly when they first meet. Vesper says,
I like this poker thing.
She comes in and she's being all cute. And he's like, oh, you're adorable. And that's straight out of the novel, where it's like, she comes in and she's like, I'm ready. But in the movie, they make her less naive. They make her more capable. She's a little more cynical about this whole plan. She's like, this plan is stupid. She's reflecting what we just said. This whole plot is fucking stupid.
I suppose you've given some thought to the notion that if you lose, our government will have directly financed terrorism.
And she's not wrong. But the evolution of their love,
but she's got ulterior motives too.
Yeah, well, yeah, and we'll get to that. But the evolution of their love overall is the perfect poker game. You have the initial dealing when they first meet up.
They're reading each other.
They're sizing each other up.
I sized you up the moment we met.
It goes without being said, they're attracted to each other.
Well, your beauty's a problem. You worry you won't be taken seriously.
Which one can say of any attractive woman with half a brain. So as charming as you are, Mr. Bond, I will be keeping my eye on our government's money and off your perfectly formed house.
You noticed?
Even accountants have imagination.
There's armor, right, as she says at one point.
Facade.
The raising of the stakes, the hiding of one's true feelings, checking each other for signs of hesitation or lack of commitment or selfish intention, as she says at one point.
You think of women as disposable pleasures rather than meaningful pursuits.
And then the call, the showdown, the moment of truth where both go all in.
You're not going to let me in there. Are you? You've got your armor back on. How's that?
I have no armor left. You stripped it from me. Whatever is left of me. Whatever is left of me. Whatever I am. I'm yours.
And unfortunately for Bond, this is still a zero-sum game, and he loses big, and that's what solidifies Bond's character from here to eternity. But overall, that theme of gambling, be it at the table or otherwise, is reflected in their relationship.
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought of that. You can't just jump in and show all your vulnerabilities. You gotta kind of play the game a bit.
That's the thing. In a post-sexual revolution world of shitty-ass dating, everybody has to constantly pretend like they don't care. They have to put on a poker face and pretend like, oh, I don't care. I don't care at all.
I think something is driving you, and I think I'll never find out what that is.
And then eventually, if any relationship is going to move forward, the truth has to come out.
Does everyone have a towel?
Yes. Everyone. Everyone except you. I wonder if that's why I love you.
But it's just like a poker match. Reading each other, making sure that it's safe, because both people have probably been hurt in the past or something, and so they have that armor up. That's the tragedy, is that both of them let the armor down. They let the love in. Bond is hesitant to jump in. She's hesitant to jump in. And then eventually they do both jump in, and then tragedy ensues, and that leads to the characterization of Bond.
But there you go. Listen, then.
But we, of course, have to view their relationship from two perspectives. There's what we see on the surface, and then there's what's actually going on once we learn she's been acting as a double agent.
Don't worry. You're not my type.
Smart.
Single.
You're wrong, buddy.
She had a boyfriend, a French Algerian. They were very much in love. He was kidnapped by the organization behind Le Chiffre. And they blackmailed her, threatening to kill him unless she cooperated.
For example, take any of the poker scenes. At first, we think she's just nervous about the outcome of the game. Later, we realize, of course, that these are looks of guilt, as well as fear over the predicament of her boyfriend.
You must have thought I was bluffing, Mr. Bond.
Because she's the one that told Le Chiffre about the tell.
What do you mean?
The twitch he has to hide when he bluffs.
Thereby making her responsible both for Bond losing to Le Chiffre, as well as the real reason why she doesn't give a green light for Bond to buy back in.
I'm gonna need the other $5 million to buy back in.
I can't do that, James.
This also gives added significance to her saving Bond's life after he drinks Le Chiffre's girlfriend's poison, because had she let him die, as far as she's concerned, her problems would have been over.
You okay?
And then after Le Chiffre's gone, at first we think she's legitimately fallen for Bond because of what they've been through, but later we realize she's actually playing him to get the password for the money.
It's just that not so long ago, I would have described your feelings towards me as, I'm trying to think of a better word than loathing.
I'm afraid I'm a complicated woman.
That is something to be afraid of.
Ding, 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 ding.
Bond, completely misdirected by Le Chiffre's Mathis comment, gives her the password that because it's her name,
V-E-S-P-E-R.
We immediately see this strong emotional look on her face that at first we think is because of this simple romantic gesture, but really it's driven by this immense amount of guilt that she's been carrying around because she is literally torturing this man who seems to always have her back and do right by her. From the shower scene to the kidnapping scene, literally all the way down to the suicide scene where she's looking at him like, really, dude? You're still trying to rescue me? even down to the minor detail of always standing up whenever she leaves a room. Bond is basically a beta male orbiter slowly leaving the friend zone, but it's all based on a lie.
Remember I told you about Le Chiffre's tell? Well, Mathis told Le Chiffre. That's how he wiped me out.
I can't believe it.
Well, neither could I.
McCurdy, you asked at one point, where is the moment where she falls for him? I think that in the end, she falls for him because from the get-go, she's trying to do whatever it takes to save her boyfriend. And she right away doesn't like this conceited, arrogant 007, but he slowly just shows that he's such a good man, right? He's an arrogant, egotistical prick, but he's such a good, chivalrous man at the end of the day, no matter how much she tries to push him away, that she falls for him because he is always on the side of good. He's not corrupt, and he's always defending the innocent. He's always doing the right thing to the point where that's where she's like,
I just want you to know that if all that was left of you was your smile and your little finger, you'd still be more of a man than anyone I've ever met.
So that is the moment if he had to pick one. But the brilliance of this romance is that there isn't just one moment. It really does organically build over time while throwing us for this loop at the end that she's actually a traitor, because it just throws on all these layers of complexity where she really is torn between these two men that she's legitimately in love with.
I figured out what that is. It's an Algerian love knot.
Really? I thought it was just something pretty.
No, you didn't. Someone gave that to you. He's a very lucky man.
And this goes back to the From Russia with Love episode where I was saying Tatiana was ordered to fall in love with Bond, but then she actually does. But with this movie, you really believe it. You can truly comprehend how this poor woman has been torn in half. It's nearly impossible to ever pick out with 100% certainty which scenes she's telling the truth and which scenes she's lying. It's brilliant.
You stopped wearing the necklace.
Yeah. It was time.
Time enough to get over someone.
Because no matter how hard I try to push you away and throw you under the bus, I can't help but love you because you're always doing the right thing. That is the attraction to Bond in general, is that even though he is this...
The man. Why can't nice guys be more like you?
Because then they'd be bad.
He's always on the side of good.
I can't help but be attracted to you.
And that's part of why she falls for him, because she's always trying to push him off, and she's actively sabotaging him the whole time. But even then, he's always persisting and winning and overcoming and still loving her. And she's desperate to stop him, and he keeps defeating that effort and her, and she loves him. But remember, she never says it. Only Bond says it, and that makes all the difference. Something that always confused me as a kid was that, being a first-timer to this movie and having seen all the movies beforehand, when Vesper first shows up, what does she say?
I'm the money?
I'm the money.
Every penny of it.
And then he says, you're every penny of it.
Every penny of it. And I
Yeah,
remember
money
being
penny.
like, Money Penny. Like, as a kid, I was like, Money Penny? Is this Money Penny? And being very confused that it wasn't. But obviously they wrote that in there knowing what people would think.
They probably did as a reference.
I haven't thought of that until just now.
Yeah.
So no one's thinking about that. Except you weirdos.
Yeah.
That kind of leads into something that I am a little bit confused about, and it's not like this movie is the only one guilty of this. I've been confused by aspects of most, if not all, of these movies.
Yeah.
But I do have some confusion in regards to Mr. White, Le Chiffre, and Eva Green being like a double agent, and Mathis and calling him into question. I don't understand it 100%, and I'll admit that.
So the Mathis stuff gets answered in the next movie. Just take the Mathis stuff, put it off to the side.
So like if we take the organization, right, you got White controlling Le Chiffre, and Le Chiffre's getting money from whoever to, just make more money for Mr. White?
Think of Le Chiffre's character like in The Dark Knight, Mr. Yao, who takes all the mobsters' money.
I'm good with calculation.
Much like in The Big Short, Christian Bale's character in that movie, he's in managing the funds that he's getting from his clients.
Mr. White will have told you that I have provided reliable banking services for many other freedom fighters over the years.
And all of his clients are all terrorists.
Has he been playing the stock market with his clients' funds? I'm not going to be too happy when they find out it's gone.
So he's basically gambling their money to make more money for himself, for whatever.
That's what I'm wondering. Like, is he doing it for them or for himself?
Both, but mostly for himself.
He's basically investment broker, right? They would invest
Hedge
their
fund
money.
manager,
They're investing.
so he messes up. He loses
They take their
everyone's
portfolios,
money.
invest their money so they would make more money, but he's kind of doing it in a shady way and by using it to fund terrorism things that will
At Mr.
boost
White's
his amount of money.
orders?
That's not the movie. The movie is the casino story and the Vesper story. The movie's not necessarily the Mr. White stuff. We just know that this guy's a bad guy.
Is it a separate organization that's controlling Vesperland and her boyfriend and blackmailing her into this whole situation of giving a different account number?
The organization behind Le Chiffre, which is Mr. White's mysterious organization, which we all know as Spectre, is basically doing with Le Chiffre the same thing they did with Osato back in You Only Live Twice.
Osato and number 11, report now.
We don't know for sure, but you can assume that he doesn't even have a number. He's just working for Spectre as someone who can make them a ton of money.
How do I trust this man that I've never met with my money?
You ask for the introduction. That's all my organization will guarantee.
Once they found out that it was going to be Vesper, who was the Treasury representative, they immediately got to work in kidnapping somebody close to her so that they could control her.
So that happens after she's selected to be involved.
That's to be assumed.
Yeah.
The confusion is this, okay? So the whole thing is Le Chiffre lying when he says,
I'm afraid your friend Mathis is really my friend Mathis.
Why would he say that if Mathis is indeed innocent, right? They leave it a bit open-ended because M says later, okay, now Mathis is cleared. And Bond's like, no.
We'll just prove that she's guilty, not that he's innocent.
Bond is like, Vesper is innocent because she's so hot, right? Bond's got that attribute back where he's blinded by Vagine. He's like, of the two people who are on my side, it would clearly be Mathis and it wouldn't be this hot babe that I'm in love with, right? Because he's committing the first sin of Bond, which is letting his emotions dictate his actions.
Anything else you remember?
As well as who he decides to trust, which in this movie is hoes before bros.
Anything that can help us?
Help us?
Mm-hmm.
Or help you?
The confusion, though, is the understanding that Vesper and Le Chiffre staged the kidnapping so that Bond would make Chase? Did they stage that kidnapping, like where she gets shoved into a car and she's like,
Mathis needs me.
Mathis.
This is another one of those convenient movie shortcuts, because what if Bond had just continued to sit and enjoy his champagne and caviar? What if he didn't suspect Mathis on cue and ran out the door in order to witness the kidnapping? You can assume that he'd probably get a message from Le Chiffre later on saying, I have the girl, I'll trade you for the money. But instead, Bond runs after her and sees the kidnapping because it's more exciting that way. At that point, you might as well ask, how is it that Felix dropped the ball so hard by not grabbing up Le Chiffre after the game? The more interesting questions surround Mr. White's role. My assumption is that Mr. White planned this whole thing as a contingency in case Le Chiffre lost the game. In fact, Le Chiffre may have never known that Vesper was secretly working against Bond. Perhaps the whole time she was relaying information through Mr. White, who, knowing that Bond would probably never give up the password willingly,
no matter what you do, I'm not going to give you the password, which means your clients are going to hunt you down and cut you into little pieces of meat while you're still breathing.
Had his sexy heartache of an ace in the hole Vesper ready to go. In fact, one can assume that Mr. White would probably have disapproved of putting Vesper in the middle of the road for Bond to flatten because he needed her ultimately to retrieve the password. Furthermore, why else would Vesper have Mr. White's phone number saved in her phone? And then they blame it on Mathis to sow seeds of confusion within Bond's side of things. point the blame at Mathis so that Bond never suspects Vesper. All Mr. White had to do was wait for Le Chiffre to execute the kidnapping, and the show begins. Le Chiffre plants the perfect lie about Mathis. Mr. White kills Le Chiffre in front of Bond, which not only prevents Le Chiffre from talking to the CIA, but puts on a performance for Bond, making him think the show is over and he's safe. Hence the line,
Money isn't as valuable to our organization as knowing who to trust.
But clearly the money means a great deal to them because they never stop seeking it until they get it. This is the answer to Mathis's question.
What?
Why they left the two of you alive?
They get Bond to point the finger at Mathis, taking suspicion away from Vesper so she can secure the money. It's perfect because usually Bond is exercising Bond love, right? Where it's temporary. Bond's like telling a chick he loves her to get something from her. But on this initial Bond adventure, it's Vesper pushing the Bond love where it's real but temporary, right? She does, in a way, love Bond, but she is throwing him under the bus.
It's like what my boyfriend was saying the other day.
You.
It's only a few streets away. I'm moving in with my boyfriend, Ian.
If you could hand this one to my boyfriend.
You.
She had a boyfriend.
You.
Job's done. The bitch is dead.
James, did you ever ask yourself why you weren't killed that night? Isn't it obvious? She made a deal to spare your life in exchange for the money. I'm sure she hoped they would let her live. But she must have known she was going to her death.
This effectively makes Vesper the most complex Bond girl we've ever had, as she's everything that Tanya wishes she was with the falling in love with Bond under orders, but then things get real. Everything Tracy wishes she was as the damaged feminist who pushes Bond away with all her might, but relents to his dominance, and is ultimately the complete 180-degree mirror image of the embarrassingly empty Jinx Johnson by achieving a completely three-dimensional character that even justifies her Bond girl beauty as simply a function of fitting the part of Bond's cover identity, instead of her being hot just for the sake of being hot because this is a Bond movie. It is not difficult to say that Vesper Lynd is the greatest Bond girl of all time. And most importantly, she teaches Bond the lesson that he'll take with him through all of his adventures. Trust no one and don't catch feelings, no matter what. Now that all that's been said, McCurdy, are you sticking with 4?
He's probably now down at 12 below. Oh,
I'm at like the lowest you can go now.
How are you at 4? How do we get him up from 4? Because at least we both agree, Char, that it's above Goldfinger, right? McCurdy, can you argue below Goldfinger?
I just feel like if someone said, okay, we're going to watch a James Bond movie.
I'm throwing in Casino.
I'm not throwing in Casino because it doesn't give me any Bond vibes. But you know what movies do? The top 3 do, for sure.
I think that my same old thing as before, and this is where the fruits of your past are biting you in the butt. I think that if you were tickling my balls with a long rope and saying that if it was GoldenEye From Russia with Love and then you said Casino, I'd be like, oh baby, you're speaking my language.
Sure.
But that Goldfinger messes me up. That fucking Goldfinger messes me up to where like I want Casino to beat out Goldfinger, but not beat out GoldenEye, because I think GoldenEye is the epitome of the Bond films.
You want Eva Green to be a lesbian that Bond turns because he's so good at poker.
Yeah, poke her.
Problem is my main point really just comes down to the thing that you guys are like, well, that doesn't really measure to a point, is the iconography, right? Charlie makes a lot of good points. This is a really well-written story.
I would think this would be right up your alley with the romance.
I mean, yeah,
Vulnerable
but I don't know
Bond.
what it is. I think it's just...
McCurdy wasn't feeling the love.
Just wasn't feeling it, man.
Movie.
Just wasn't feeling it, man.
You need to drink more of this before you watch.
I watched the movie. There are elements that are very good. Obviously, there's really good story, not plot, but story elements that are really good in this movie. But where the movie kind of lacks is the Bond-isms, the iconicness of it. I mean, even not hearing the Bond theme for most of the film, I'm kind of left
gonna drink
at
for
like,
you, by the way.
That's how I feel as I'm watching the movie. And I'm like, there's just not enough there to get me pumped. You know, we did a ranking. I think people were like, oh man, Le Chiffre's such a great character. He's such the best villain. After watching this movie, I'm like, is he? It's kind of lame. He's kind of a lame
cool.
character.
He turns out to be more of like a middle bad guy. Which makes sense for a Bond,
yeah.
first as a 00 agent.
Well, let me stand up for Le Chiffre for a minute. The reason he is so beloved is, of course, because he is complex. He and Bond never throw a punch, and that's not just a sign of a good villain, but the sign of a great villain. I've said in the past that when it comes to female characters, there's a tendency to simply judge them as physically strong or not strong, and that's that, which is a lazy and boring assessment programmed into us by contemporary social politics. People tend to do the same thing with bad guys. Uncreative bad guy stories often fall back on fight scenes and punch for punches, and that's boring and uninteresting because they are predictable and often very one-sided. Le Chiffre is what you would get if Boris Grushenko was made a primary villain. The man is all brains and very little brawn. If he went up against Bond, he would predictably get his ass kicked. This is what makes Le Chiffre so interesting and not boring, because on top of this is a very un-Bond villain-like predicament of being a desperate middleman. This is a rare case where the bad guy is ultimately killed by other bad guys, which only serves to highlight the complexity of this character's desperate predicament, with Bond on one side,
I will take a hand for this betrayal, but you needed to blink out.
his own clients hunting him, and Mr. White on the other. Something that physically manifests as this guy literally weeping blood. How many times have y'all heard me go on about the importance of a connection between Bond and bad guy beyond the physical? The movie could have just pitted these two against each other in a boring punch for punch, which is what we're teased with when Bond grabs the steak knife to go handle Le Chiffre physically.
James, get the girl out.
Such a thing takes little effort story-wise and is ultimately boring. Instead, these men return to their real battleground, the poker table. We even see an echo of the free-running scene where Le Chiffre is always very precise and smooth with his chip handling. And then there's Bond aggressively splashing the pot. Bond and Le Chiffre battle with words and looks quite reminiscent of our other greatest Bond villain, Goldfinger. Everything at the Casino Royale takes the Goldfinger golf scene to a whole new level, which actually takes effort far and away beyond a simple battle of fists. Because as Bond explains in the train scene,
In poker, you never play your hand. You play the man across from you.
poker isn't just hoping for the best cards, but about assessing the man on the other side of the table and reading his bluffs. In order to do so, Bond continuously plays provocateur with Le Chiffre, starting with breaking his cover and using his real name.
James Bond. You'll find the reservation under Beach.
Welcome, Mr. Bond.
Welcome, Mr. Beach. Was that Bond? I'm a little confused.
Well, we wouldn't want that, would we?
Earlier in the film, M says,
Arrogance and self-awareness seldom go hand in hand.
Later, Bond says to Vesper,
And ironically enough, makes it less likely for her to be accepted and promoted by her male superiors, who mistake her insecurities for arrogance.
which is what Vesper herself begins to believe about Bond.
Very funny.
Look, if Le Chiffre is that well connected, he knows who I am and where the money's coming from, which means he's decided to play me anyway. So he's either desperate or he's overly confident, but either way, that tells me something about him. And all he gets in return is a name he already has.
She begins to mistake his confidence and calculated plays as egotism.
And now he knows something about you. He knows you're reckless. Take the next one. There isn't enough room for me and your ego.
When really it's all part of Bond's strategy. When Bond loses a hand on purpose, Vesper sees this as Bond not being a good poker player.
You're losing so fast we won't be here past midnight.
Bond then explains that he did so on purpose to discover Le Chiffre's tell.
It was worth it to discover his tell,
You're the best hand.
which he got on the last card. The odds against were 23-1, and he'd know that. When he did his first raise, he had nothing. Winning was blind luck.
Maybe he can actually pull this off.
And that's Bond's relationship to Le Chiffre, not punching him until he relents physically, but provoking and probing him for weaknesses that he can exploit. Bond does this so well that Le Chiffre, in his desperation, seeks to remove Bond from the game by whatever means necessary, essentially cheating, because his very life is at stake. Their relationship escalates to not a fight scene, but a torture scene, where Le Chiffre, just like Goldfinger, ties Bond to a chair and threatens to permanently emasculate him. Just as Bond bluffs Goldfinger to let him live,
You know nothing, Mr. Bond.
Operation Grand Slam, for instance.
Bond tells Le Chiffre that no matter what he does, he won't give up the password.
The password, please.
The question is Bond bluffing?
I've got a little edge. Down there. Would you mind?
Yes! 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 Now the whole world's gonna know that you died scratching my balls!
Instead of breaking free of the chair using some Q gadget and beating up Le Chiffre, the scene continues on this higher level of storytelling. Le Chiffre calls his bluff and threatens to feed Bond his own, PPK.
I'll feed you what you see not to value.
This is where Mr. White begins his final manipulation of Bond by killing Le Chiffre in front of him in order to later secure the password using Vesper. All of this added up makes Le Chiffre just as unique and complex as our Bond girl. Not a classic Bond villain hell-bent on destroying the world or enriching himself for the sake of power, but rather enriching himself for the sake of survival. So is Le Chiffre kinda lame? Well, yeah. And that's exactly what makes him such a fresh and compelling Bond villain. Here's a segment that's a long time coming because you've all heard me say repeatedly that I don't really consider a Bond's performance in a film because I see them all as pretty much the same. We've had numerous comments along the way calling me out for this thought, and I want to address these comments now. I get it. Different actors are going to portray Bond in different ways. This goes without being said. My whole point is that James Bond is not exactly a complex character, and yet only a specific kind of a man can pull off the character. Because there are many attributes that add up to the complete Bond, but the way I see it, and the reason why I really never answer the question of who is your favorite Bond, is because I firmly believe that each Bond actor excels at one particular trait more than the others, as if they each champion a piece of a James Bond pie chart. I'd love to argue this endlessly in the comments, so please let us know if you agree or disagree, or if you have your own labels for these guys. But here's my breakdown of the Bonds and their particular strengths in the role. Sean Connery, the classy Bond. This is the guy who set the tone from whence all Bondness flows. Because first and foremost, James Bond is a classy f***ing dude. The way he dresses, the way he carries himself, the way he beds the lady folk, all stemming first and foremost from a sense of class. He knows all the right wines and whiskeys and a little about everything else.
I'd say it was a 30-year-old fiend indifferently blended, sir. An overdose of Bombois.
And he'll gladly have a pleasant sit-down dinner or a round of golf with his enemy before brutally putting them in the ground. Lazenby, the butt-chin Bond. Just kidding, he's the brazen Bond. Lazenby is bold.
He had lots of guts.
And it was this boldness that got him the role in the first place. The guy throws everything he has into every punch and has terrific physicality throughout his film. He also shamelessly throws himself at every woman he meets, even if it will cost him the mission. The dude is gutsy, fierce, and brutal in everything he does. More, the charming Bond. Roger approaches every situation with a wink and a nod and an eye roll or two or three, consistently delivering sarcasm to friend and foe alike.
A water pistol.
His greatest weapon is his sense of humor, which he utilizes to both pump women for information and to disarm his enemies before reaping their souls.
Heartbroken, Mr. Drax.
Timothy Dalton, the sentimental Bond. Stoicism be damned, our resident thespian actor, Timothy Dalton, is always feeling something, whether it be intense pain and anguish or affectionate fondness. He certainly brings a level of humanity to the role, consistently motivated by bloody revenge and doing the right thing. Pierce Brosnan, the smooth Bond. This man is the personification of butter. Pierce can deliver the comedy of Moore just as easily as the cruelty of Connery, and he does so with the smoothness of a greased-up cue ball. Every line delivered with that trademark ASMR sexiness with more clicks and pops than a vinyl record. Every physical movement executed with such ease, it's like an angel skating on cream. Just gorgeous. Daniel Craig, the badass Bond. Now here comes Mr. Six-Pack. James Bond has always been a fighter, but now he's a UFC bar brawler. Maybe you've called Bond a badass before, but never like this. Everything the guy says or does is badass. The way he stands is badass. The way he sits is badass. The way he sits while being tortured is badass. Every time he opens his fucking mouth, all that comes out is badass shit.
Yes. Considerably.
All of these men exhibit all of the traits of the other Bonds. Connery can be as smooth as Pierce, Dalton can be as charming as Roger, Craig can be as brazen as Lazenby, but it is these specific attributes that each of them champion that prevent me from ever landing on a singular greatest Bond because they're each so great in their own way. They all rock a specific Bond trait that added up as the totality of the whole James Bond character pie. Every time I try to land on one of them as the GOAT, I remember how the others are just as great when judged by other strengths and factors. Because after all, James Bond is classy, brazen, charming, a smooth operator who is sentimental when it's the right thing to do, but badass when it counts. And just as Ian Fleming described him, each man is capable of intense cruelty, and this is what makes 007 exciting. The reason men want to be him and women want to be with him stems from this excitement, because he is a killer.
One of the interesting things about Bond is that he's just as bad as they are. He's a murderer, a killer. Cold, cruel, ruthless killer. He just happens to be working for the side that's called good.
He is a good man, not because he is meek and polite and nice, but because he is capable of intense cruelty, but reserves his cruel actions for evil men who hurt the innocent. This is why I've always stood firmly against the notion that Bond is a misogynist. Deep down, does anybody honestly think that James Bond actually hates women? Or does he simply understand women in a completely realistic way that the idealists refuse to accept? Such men assume that if men and women are indeed carbon copies of one another, it can be assumed that women also make decisions predominantly with logic. And therefore, the logical thing for a woman is to select a nice guy because he isn't going to be a meanie head to her. After all, isn't that what a reasonable man would do?
What is it about bad man? You, my husband. I had so many chances to be happy. So many nice guys. Why can't nice guys be more like you?
Because then they'd be bad.
Yes. That's so much more interesting.
But while some women say this makes that nice guy boring, what they really mean is he can't be counted on to get going when it's time for action. There is a very real, very biological reason that women do not select nice guys, and it has to do with survival. Nice guys, meek men, aren't useful when it comes to lions, tigers, and jaws. And for that, you need a bad motherfucker. What ultimately makes James Bond so desirable to these women is not his looks or his glib remarks nor pithy comebacks, but his ability to make manifest. To aim at something and kill it or take it or win it, hinted at whenever a woman says of a man, he takes what he wants. This is what bad men do because such a thing often requires operating outside of the rules. Well, this is exactly where James Bond lives.
What is it the audience likes about him?
Well, he's bad. I mean, I think, and in all sorts of ways. He's sort of the character that knows who the bad guy is and goes after them. There's something we immediately understand about this man. I mean, every culture has a sort of one hero going after justice, and he is the British one.
Bond breaks the rules to save the world, and this leads to getting the girl as a byproduct, not the primary goal. He doesn't even play by the rules in his own organization.
He's logged into our secure website using your name and password.
How the hell does he know these things?
He's a man who is granted a unique license to not only kill, but to do whatever necessary at all times to protect that which matters most, the big picture. He gets what he wants because he goes after it and doesn't stop until he gets it, including the girl. Gentlemen, if you ever want to turn on a lady's super soaker, be like this. Unfortunately, for the progressive idealists, this is unfair because rules are put into place for a reason. so that all may be equal. If only women awarded such noble cowardice. But alas, it simply isn't so. After all, until a man is tested, what's the difference between civility and cowardice? And this is obviously why women play hard to get, to test a man's resolve. Because if he's such a nice guy that he'll stop chasing with a little pushback, how can he be relied upon when the going gets tough? Hence the phrase, nice guys finish last. James Bond is not that guy. He's the guy that does whatever it takes to finish first. And yet for the idealists, it is the efforts of those like James Bond that allow for such a luxurious worldview of well-defended pleasantness. A man like Bond is rewarded because he sees such a worldview for what it truly is. Weakness. He is a bad man. But as True Detectives Rustin Cole put it, the world needs bad men. We keep the other bad men from the door. This means that most of the time Bond cannot be nice, because being nice counteracts and undermines such efforts. Instead, he must be cruel. He must be as cruel as his enemies against his enemies. And it is this knowledge that he can be a monster, and yet is only a monster towards other monsters, that makes him exciting to women, like watching a horror movie, to taste the excitement and fear of danger, and yet know that you are safe, because that's what it brings at the end of the day, safety and security, and a man who thrives in two distinct worlds. One foot upon gentlemanliness, the other upon animality. As Luda once put it, a gentleman in the street, but a freak in the bed. A standing which allows him to sit and enjoy a couple Vespers and caviar as a gent, and then access the animal when it counts, to chase, to kill, to make love, to go outside the defended walls and slay the monster and bring home their meat to feed the village. Winning at all cost, because winning means survival, both for Bond and for the village. So to protect the village from beasts, Bond must become a beast himself. Everything a man need ever know about a woman can be summed up by this concept of Beauty and the Beast. Women want a beast, because a beast will defend them and the children against monsters, metaphorical or otherwise. Nice guys don't do this. They get eaten by the monsters. So she desires the beast, and yet the beast is capable of being cruel to her, as a beast will be. So she sets out to tame him, that her beauty and her grace could act as a collar of domestication, whereby he's a gentleman when she wants him to be, and then unleashes the animal when she wants him to, both on the bad guys and her vagina. Being a gentleman, a gentle man, is relative to the fickle needs of women. And so here we are, another modern retelling of Beauty and the Beast, Beauty and the Bond. But here's the catch. No woman can truly land nor tame 007, who understands that he is an outlier. A man that perhaps in the ancient past would have been a patriarch, the likes of Genghis Khan or Abraham, with thousands of wives and concubines, but that now must live a life of solitude, as a number in the big picture, so that others may enjoy families and fatherhood. Therefore, the Bond haters have it backwards. Bond is a champion of women, knowing full well the horrors of reality and the cruelty of men outside the gates of civilization. Bond does his best to spare them and the world of such horror. And to do so, he must be two seemingly dichotomous things at the same time. Classy and yet cruel. Brazen and yet charming. Sentimental and stoic. Smooth and badass. Animal and angel.
So you want me to be half monk, half hitman?
But he is above all things bad. Seemingly for goodness sake, and that makes all the difference.
The successful criminal brain is always superior. It has to be. Why become criminal?
You work for peanuts. A hearty well done from Her Majesty the Queen and a pittance of a pension. Apart from that, we are the same.
Did you ever ask why? Why we toppled all those dictators, undermined all those regimes?
It was the job we were chosen for.
And that's Bond. That is Bond. He is that watcher on the walls. He can't be going home at night with Moneypenny and tucking the kids into bed. He is that outlier whose whole purpose is to make sure that we can all be doing so.
He shouldn't be concerned with anything but himself.
That's his sacrifice. And it's almost as if his payment is to not live fast and die young, but because he's going to die young, live fast and luxuriously and have access to all these nice things that at the end of the day, he doesn't own.
You like married women, don't you, James?
That keeps things simple.
But he gets to enjoy as a trade-off.
I knew it was too early to promote you.
Well, I understand double O's have a very short life expectancy. So your mistake will be short-lived.
Literally the only person he sort of kind of gets close to is M.
I love you too, Em.
And it goes without being said, that's obviously because she's directly plugged into his job, because his job is his life. He has these meaningless relationships and that he can't ever get close to anybody. But that's the point. That's his sacrifice. And that goes back to that moment in A View to a Kill.
It should certainly bear closer inspection.
We're on a mission.
Sir Godfrey, on a mission, I am expected to sacrifice myself.
No, man, this is my job. My job is having the ability to approach any woman on the planet in order to investigate and undermine bad guys and get on my level, Sir Godfrey. You don't even know what the I'm talking about because you're on a lower level.
What do you do to survive?
I take pleasure.
And that's the male fantasy part of these stories is, oh, wouldn't it be great if you could pick any chick you wanted and they're all hot? But that's what we think because we're also on that lower level. Meanwhile, up on Bond's level, that ability, that power comes with a price. And that is his sacrifice. James Bond knows he can also never have a regular family life. And the feminists want to come in and be like, he's a bad guy. It's like, he's doing his job. It's no different than people want to come in and say the military is bad because the military facilitates war. But the reality is that war and death and awfulness and chaos is normal. And so you need these people who can keep that at bay so that the rest of us have the luxury to have, quote, normal lives.
Yeah.
But over time, we all take it for granted. We take for granted that these other people make these sacrifices because we don't see them because they operate in the shadows. And that makes us weak. And we need these reminders that there are always these people out there defending the walls while we're going to brunch.
Yeah, whether it's Batman or Bond or Secret Agent or a trash man. You just put the bin out and you check it later in the day and the bin's empty. It's like, well, there's a fucking guy who wakes up early in the morning. He deals with everyone's trash.
Yeah. But at least that guy gets to go back home.
True.
And his wife and hang out
but
with
his wife
kids.
says, oh, you kind of smell like garbage.
Vesper's like, you smell like you've murdered somebody today. You said you were done with that. You said you were done with murder.
I gotta pay the bills.
Where Fleming is special is that he gives this man a completely opposite side and makes him very human and makes him one of us. And so we put ourselves in his place, but recognize that side to him, which probably does lurk in all of us in some small degree or not.
I still maintain and I believe that Martin Campbell's idea for this movie was like the origin story of James Bond, even down to the point where, like, you know, Bond gets Vesper a dress. He's like, I need you to look good.
I need you looking fabulous. So that when you walk up behind me and kiss me on the neck, the players across from me will be thinking about your neckline and not about their cards.
Bond is challenging Vesper to play a feminine role by essentially having her recreate that moment Solange walked in and kissed her husband, Mr. Demetrius.
And then she retorts back where he comes in. He's like, I have a dinner jacket.
I have a dinner jacket.
There are dinner jackets and dinner jackets. This is the latter. And I need you looking like a man who belongs at that table.
That whole moment of him putting on the iconic tuxedo, like, that's all played up to a point where it feels like the filmmakers are purposely making the scene kind of feel like Batman putting on the bat suit for the first time. Like, that's really what that scene felt like to me. So it just made sense throughout the movie that he's like, well, he's not James Bond yet. He's not 007 yet. He's not the one from the movies yet. This is his origin movie.
It's Batman Begins.
So he can't say the iconic line. We can't put the iconic music till the very end of the movie. And it fits with the story because everything that Charlie said about, you know, this is why he's this cold-hearted person. But as the movie goes on, I do feel like this movie feels empty and it's missing things.
Another just kind of like odd moment is when, we're so used to, what do you have? Vodka martini, shaken not stirred. In this case, it was
Vodka martini.
Shaken or stirred?
Do I look like I give a damn?
That's an interesting way of keeping it fresh, like having Bond say something different. But in this, Bond is just playing cards, right? And he's like, send the bar guy over. The guy comes over, and out of nowhere,
just makes up a drink.
Bond makes up a drink.
Dry martini.
Oui, monsieur.
Wait. 3 measures of Gordon's, 1 of vodka, half a measure of quinoa lily. Shake it over rice, and then add a thin slice of lemon peel.
Yes, sir.
I'll have one of those.
So will I. Certainly.
My friend, bring me one as well. Keep the fruit.
He just makes up this drink that sounds great, and that's another one of those things where as a kid I was like, wait, is he making up a vodka martini? No, it's not a vodka martini. It's something new, and he just does it, and it's like, why? Why does he do
Vesper, it? Well, he makes the drink, but like the weirdest part about the shaken not stirred thing is like typically people don't order martinis shaken. Most of the time they're just stirred.
Because you get little chunks of ice, which is not good.
So it's just a weird thing where he says shaken not stirred. That's specific to his character. So then when the guy asked him, it's like the writers are trying to be tongue in cheek about it, but at the same time, it's like that ruins the logic of how an actual martini is ordered. So it's a little
funny
weird.
When you were talking about how you see this movie, I was actually thinking about martinis and the way Bond ordered it. Like, he orders it shaken, so there's little bits of ice, and it's a little bit more diluted, and that's some of the aspects of this movie you don't like, or the length, or the dilution, and there's just little pieces that shouldn't be there.
But it's also confusing because it's like he's ordering vodka martinis, but then he's also ordering this random drink called a Vesper, why? What is the significance of the Vesper, and how did he come up with the ingredients?
What happens with Vesper Lind? Maybe he never has another Vesper, and that's when he gets into his typical Bond drink. But I mean, maybe you're in a way saying like the audience would have benefited from, rather than him becoming and saying James Bond at the end, like somehow if the pre-title sequence took care of that in that like first 10 minutes or something, and then from the title sequence on, he is the Bond that people know.
I will say this about the prologue. It is shot much differently than the rest of the film on a whole.
It's supposed to look like a classic spy drama. Like it's sending a message of like, we're starting anew.
It's shot in black and white in 16 mil because you can tell it's super grainy. Specifically, the bathroom fight is shot super grainy.
Yeah, it is.
And like slightly, probably a little overexposed as well. All of the angles and shots leading up to him talking to him is like shot with these really cool Dutch angles. So all the shots are like slightly off kilter. It has a very film noir look to it. And then the bathroom stuff feels separate from it because then it's like, oh, well, now it's all tied into the gun barrel thing. It just feels like such a weird part because it's like there's that part of the movie and then the rest of the movie, it's not that at all.
Had the whole movie been like that, it really would have been like a classic 1950s, 60s spy drama. It's almost like the idea was, let's take Bond's whole backstory and just compress it into the prologue. And then from there, we can do whatever we want. But in the prologue, we're going to do a black and white. Like, we're going to make it feel like it's the 1960s. We're going to have a throwback to Ian Fleming's 1960s. And then they
to me, it's not a negative to the film, but it is interesting to see that they were like, let's try something a little new and just do a different style for the beginning of the movie. And then the rest of the movie isn't that way. Not to say that other movies didn't have some kind of style or flair to the way they shot or edited them. Because obviously we talked about that a lot in Die Another Day, had a lot of these crazy ramping motion, like swishing things. If we don't want to elongate this too much, like I'll concede and say, yeah, I think it's under GoldenEye, but From Russia with Love's pretty great on its own. And I think I could see where Charlie would be like, well, if From Russia with Love was here, I could see it putting down below this. Goldfinger, I know, kind of has some issues in the plot towards the end of it, but I still think it's a much more fun and engaging movie. I agree with you, Charlie. I think GoldenEye is still the better movie.
I mean, that's where I'm going to stick to. And again, doesn't mean that Casino is a bad movie. Casino rocks, but Casino lives on one end of a spectrum. other movies in the top 10 live on another end of the spectrum, and then GoldenEye.
So you're saying we should
is
have
the
two
perfect
separate lists?
No,
No, that's not what he's saying.
No,
He's
no,
just
no, no,
saying-
no.
Where Casino's the top of one and GoldenEye is the top of another.
Yes, people can conceive of a universe where there are those separate lists, and one is like the dark movies and the other are the goofy movies. But that only accentuates my point, which is that GoldenEye is both of those lists combined. Because GoldenEye, there are moments of humor in this movie, right? There are moments of humor.
Not many.
And how the hell did you find out where I lived?
Same way I found out your name. I thought M was a randomly assigned letter. I had no idea it stood for...
Utter one more syllable and I'll have you killed.
But even don't touch that.
Don't touch that. It's my lunch.
Stuff like that is where GoldenEye manages to ride this balance beam of fun and sometimes goofy and then very serious. It manages that balance so perfectly that I got to give it those props as a movie versus an adaptation of a book. Because what is the best James Bond book adaptation? Casino Royale, hands down, best adaptation. But how does that go up against a movie that is the collective of tropes that happened over decades of filmmaking of Bond movies? It's GoldenEye. When it comes to these movies, this is the epitome of the collective, right? Now, if we were ranking action movies, Casino Royale, up against Die Hard and up against Bourne Identity movies and all that, Casino Royale would be intermixed with those, and then GoldenEye would be further down the list. But when it comes to ranking Bond movies, and again, this goes back to our initial episode 3 of From Russia with Love versus Goldfinger, there's a difference between a good movie, be it action or otherwise, and a good Bond movie. And you just can't take it away from GoldenEye. If you're a kid, you might be like, well, where's all the fun stuff? Where's Q? Again, this is why it's okay, if you love goofy Bond, you live with Spy Who Loved Me. If you love serious Bond, you're with Casino Royale. If you want the most balanced Bond that's ever been, you're with GoldenEye.
Yeah.
And that's why it tops my list.
And
that's without going into the specifics of GoldenEye. Because when you go into the specifics, it's like, oh man, all the bad guys are great. Like Boris Grishenko is great, and Xenia Zergevna Onatop is great, and Alec Trevelyan being like a Dark Link version of Bond. All these elements are so much fun and awesome, and you got your beginning of the movie, you got the GoldenEye layer. At the end, you have the GoldenEye layer. You have that mirror effect. You have all these. I hesitate to go into it because I got to go off the long list again, but it's...
You don't need to go off the long list.
Well,
but
a lot of that stuff
with
is
your point,
silly.
though.
Does Bond need to be silly?
Not silly. I don't think GoldenEye never. But that's the whole point. The whole appeal of GoldenEye is that it manages to be all those things without being silly. Yes, a volcano layer is silly, but specifically GoldenEye manages to have all of these elements that typically were silly. But our Lord and Savior, Martin Campbell, manages to do all of that and not ever fall off the balance beam into crazy land. That's why I always say GoldenEye is such a well-balanced movie. It's the epitome of the Bond movies, goofy and serious combined into one. But if you just want dark, stark, and depressing, if you just want Batman Begins, go watch Casino. But that's
I think I do.
A specific taste.
It's just not a great mix. You've got a really compelling story.
Bond becoming Bond. You got some great parkour. You got a great airport scene. You got great card playing scene.
Bond movie at the beginning of his career and Bond movie at the end of his career. And that's what makes the decision somewhat difficult. But for me, it's simplified by the idea that GoldenEye is perfectly well balanced of all Bonds.
Casino Royale and License to Kill are over here.
Diamonds Are Forever and The Spy Who Loved Me are over here.
And GoldenEye is right here, the perfect balance of all things. GoldenEye never reaches a point of oversaturated goofiness. It is perfectly balanced.
I rewatched GoldenEye a good 2-3 times in preparation for this, thinking it was going to be a big battle for 1 and 2. And I found myself getting pretty bored with GoldenEye, and Casino was pretty fresh for me throughout my multiple rewatches of
But
it.
would you say though, Nanz? Would you say that's because GoldenEye is a boring movie, or would you say because your specific tastes are more geared towards that side of the spectrum, which is License to Kill and Casino, the darkness?
I
You
would
like
say
the darkness.
It's probably my mind's more geared towards that.
I think I remember more out of GoldenEye overall than I do when I think about this movie. Because this movie, I think about, there's a poker scene. It takes up a chunk of the movie. I do remember the parkour scene, and that's about it. Like I don't think about the rest of the movie after that. I'm like, oh yeah, there's that plane thing. Like I completely forgot the Aston Martin DB5 was even in this movie. I watched this movie, I'm like, oh, that's in this movie. I completely forgot about that. This movie's somewhat forgettable in times, and I feel like it is a little more slow paced than it needs to be for a Bond movie, like Charlie keeps harping on, and that's probably why I just don't see it as the top tier.
I think it's a damn good one.
It's a good movie. It's not a good Bond movie. I think really what it comes down to for me is this movie is like the best vodka that money can buy, and GoldenEye is a complete vodka martini, shaken not stirred.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about Casino Royale. Or as Felix says in this movie, I'll have everything hold the fruit. This movie is hold the fruit. This movie is hold like everything that makes Bond fun is gone.
Mr. Zach says, my personal favorite Bond for how emotionally powerful it is, and they somehow made 45 minutes of people playing poker thrilling. Kind of sounds like Patterson. Lemmy as God says, this is number 1 on my list. The story is complex without being convoluted. Great villain with a coherent motivation. The stakes are not as big as in many other Bond movies, but I don't think it makes the story any less compelling. The movie is great, modernized adaptation of Fleming's novel. Yeah, without a doubt. It is a great blend of the classy espionage elements of some of the Connery Bonds, which were more closely based on the books, and the compelling action sequences that developed later. I could see the decision to switch baccarat to poker being criticized as an example of Eon doing what is popular at the time, but I think it was a great choice because far more people understand the rules of poker than baccarat, so it makes the lengthy scenes at the table more accessible. Yeah, true. Craig is great as Bond, and he has good chemistry with Green as Vesper. The scene where he crashes the car of the Goldfinger doppelganger is one of my all-time favorites. The movie is also just beautiful to look at and has a great score. While not necessarily the best criteria to determine the best Bond movie, this is the movie I recommend to people who have never seen a Bond movie to try to get them to understand the appeal of the franchise. So many of the iconic Bond tropes are here, packaged in a way that even someone who might be reluctant to buy in can enjoy, though it did not manage to convert my wife into a Bond fan.
It's like Bond. It's Bond
I would
Light.
disagree with that.
It's Bond Light. Let's say that.
It's accessible.
It's more of a
It's a more
Bourne movie than it is a
accessible
Bond.
Bond movie.
It is accessible.
More of a
but
modern
again,
action movie
there's a reason Nanz put
with
it at the
sprinkles
top.
of Bond in there.
Barrel Rider 26 says,
Yeah.
pretty sure it will go to the top of the list. Good and uncomplicated plot. Pacing is good. Action is good. Villain is good. Bond is good. Bond girl is good. Score is good. Just an all-around good film. Seems to be a film that just went back to the gritty basics. No crazy gadgets. Not much humor. Just a classic spy movie. Again, to my point, it's on one side of things. I guess my only small problem is the final poker scene in which everyone seems to have crazy good hands, but I suppose it wouldn't have been as fun if Bond won with a pair of sixes, of course. The Entertainer says, a great reworking of Bond that brings the character back to Fleming. One of the best in the series, together with License to Kill. This is the only one that really nailed the darkness in Bond. Again, one side of the spectrum. Craig brings a thuggishness to the role that we haven't seen before, but it works well with the more realistic tone of the film, while the classic Bond suaveness is something he has to grow into for the sake of the mission, adding to the believability. The poker game at Casino Royale is by far the best Fleming-esque showdown between Bond and the villain to date. I absolutely agree with changing the game from baccarat to poker to add to the excitement. The game between Bond and Le Chiffre in Casino Royale 54 should be a good indication of how boring that would have been. True. However, there are two things that bug me. The first thing is the obvious betrayal from Miss Lind. Not that I have anything against it from a narrative standpoint, but the prolonged scenes of making love on the beach, etc., that harkens back to Bond and Tracy in Secret Service just doesn't work as effectively. Tracy's death comes sudden and quick at the very end of the film, while we more or less get the entirety of Bond and Vesper's romance after the events at Casino Royale are concluded. Of course, by the end of Secret Service, Tracy's death is fairly obvious as well, but at least it's short and packs a bigger punch. Casino Royale takes so much time setting Vesper's death up, and it makes the scene less impactful. Second issue would be that while this is an origin story for Bond, the first couple of action sequences doesn't have a Bond feel to them, the Madagascar and airport chases. That's your point, McCurdy. The scenes are spectacular, but a bit too long and feels too much like I'm watching any generic action movie. I get that they tried making Bond realistic so he doesn't get to use exploding pens and laser watches, but you could still make the action a bit more enjoyable to give it that Bond feel. I think Skyfall improved on the action sequences immensely in this regard. What's a Skyfall? Other than that, I think this film is absolutely fantastic. I currently rank it number 4 on my list. The Entertainer and McCurdy for the win. Spectre Chair Engineer says the Bond franchise is the best because they're the only movies that have the balls to shoot you, the viewer, at the start. At their core, they are about being a man, going on an adventure, facing your nemesis, white-knuckling through the challenges, being cool under pressure, wooing women, losing women, getting over it, sort of, and looking cool as hell while doing it. Casino Royale, more than any of the other movies, embodies this. Even the theme song acts as both warning and introduction to this dangerous world. I'm yourself because no one else here will save you. Are you willing to die? It explores all of this in depth rather than simply surface-level fun. The plot is entirely character-driven, where you can rationally lay out how Bond's actions in Madagascar set off the entire rest of the plot. A leads to B, leads to C. Strong contrast to head-scratchers like Octopussy, Living Daylights, etc. Each character has their own strengths and weaknesses, pressing on the other and hoping they break first. Bond is an overconfident womanizer, Le Chiffre is desperate, etc. Bond's actions are always true to his blunt instrument nature. The valet distraction, a dirty trick to win the knife fight at the museum. Vesper and Solange are beautiful and complicated Bond girls. No cardboard cutouts or fake empowerment figures. Fucking amen to that. David Arnold's score is genius, maybe his best, perfectly conveys the emotional flow of every scene. Even if you knew nothing about poker, you could easily tell when Bond is winning or losing by the music alone. I could go on, but you get the point. If Die Another Day spun Fleming in his grave, then this helped him rest easy. For some reason, though, every time I watch, I get the urge to buy a Sony Vaio laptop. Don't know what the hell that's all about. P. Wilkinson says, Casino Royale is top dog on my list. I do have a slight nostalgic bias toward it, as it was the first Bond movie I ever saw in theaters at about the age of 12. Okay, so I did see Die Another Day in theaters, but you're not counting that. Ethan Blastoise says, Martin Campbell continues his weird but effective pacing, whereas GoldenEye was first half exposition, second half action. Casino Royale is first half action, second half a tight Fleming pulp story. It's a double feature. The smaller Bond plot segues into the bigger poker plot, something Fleming was good at. Since they are each 1 hour long, the pacing is bare bones. Craig gets worshipped for bringing humanity to the character as he mows down 80 people blindfolded and never bleeds. Casino Royale brought back Bond's humanity through action. One-man army Bond is dead. Even the outlandish stunts are humanly possible. The parkour chase and terrorist fight have the best stunt work action since License to Kill. The stairwell fight and sinking building are raw and brutal. Bond fights 1 to 2 henchmen at a time and gets his ass handed to him. Bond's humanity is shown through psychological torture. The job is taking his soul, and he has to become a sociopath to survive. Later films reduce this to loneliness and relationship strife, which could be any job field. I love the black comedy. Bond smiling after switching the terrorist keychain bomb is the type of wit that had been missing since Connery. Craig is fun and suave to Solange and breaks the ice with dry humor to uppity Vesper, something he will later suck at. Another thing we've been starved for is Bond facing the villain at sport, which allowed for the dynamic of Bond showing his hand all but telling the villain that he's the law. Switching from French blackjack to Texas Hold'em was a good call, but the card play is for casuals. Even when Bond has a full house, Le Chiffre says, "You thought I was bluffing?" Needs to be more high card / pair wins. However, the focus is Bond and Le Chiffre's reactions. I love how they keep one-upping each other through the night. One gripe is the car chase. Bond is on their ass the whole time, then it cuts and he lost them. They wouldn't have enough time to lay Vesper in the road. Yeah, that's kind of true. Some things just have to be goofed.
I think like a lot of this movie is just there's little things that are like.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of just like goofing with the timeline to make things
It's more
work.
fun, more interesting this way than realistic.
Exactly.
No, it's just shortcutting because you're like, well, to make it make sense, it's this, and then it's the same with my argument about, oh, well, he's on the surveillance cam, and like, how does he figure this out? It's like it's a shortcut so that the audience gets it, but it doesn't. In reality, it would be something completely different.
Yeah, the general complaint here is, well, in reality, the story would have been more boring, and the point I often make is don't ruin a good story with the truth or a hyper focus on realism, because reality is often very boring. In my opinion, Bond moves on from Vesper's death at the end, even if Eon couldn't. Thus I rank Casino Royale number 4. With number 3, For Your Eyes Only, number 2, Goldfinger, and number 1, From Russia with Love. Eon, make more like this. Craig's Bond is fun and charming towards Solange and breaks the ice with dry humor towards Vesper, something even background extras are checking him out. McCurdy, that's 2 for you, man.
Yeah, it just comes really down to like, this movie lacks. It has some really strong stuff, so it's not like it's not like a lower tier movie for me. It's just after watching this movie, I'm like, I miss many of the other James Bond tropes, and you can feel it. And there's a lot in there that I feel like this movie's missing things.
Yeah,
it's like portions of it could be distilled further, and some of it
there's
is
just
maybe
so
too
much
distilled.
Bond that's not there, and that's what's upsetting. As I watch the movie, and I get bored to tears at times, and I'm like, I wish I was watching GoldenEye. I wish I was watching Goldfinger or From Russia with Love, or
so far with the comments, I'm surprised. I'm surprised that there's not more people like 111.
I will agree with Nanz though, so far as like I disagree that this movie is boring at times. I do think that it holds you. I agree with you that it does feel like 3 different movies mashed into one. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing.
I say 3 because that last half of it, or sorry, not the last half. Basically, after Le Chiffre gets murdered, it's kind of like, okay, we got the bad guy. But then, like, the movie keeps going.
We got the bad guy. Now Bond gets to ride off into the sunset with his, oh,
yeah, I get that.
No,
I'm saying to somebody's point than this.
My babe,
Yeah, I get to the... But whoever said it their point was that, like, it feels like they took regardless of how you feel about the end of the world is not enough, or not the world is not, sorry, Honor Majesty's Secret Service, they do make a point. It's like they this whole house and falling, and it felt really built up because you have to make an action sequence out of everybody's death we have to make a thing out of everything because the book isn't that. So it's like, it's funny to me because people say, oh, it's a great adaptation of the book. I'm like, it's not the book. Like it is and it isn't. It's let's make this into a Hollywood movie. Let's take this book that was probably better for like a television movie, and let's make it into a big theatrical action movie.
Yeah, no doubt. But dude, you're not sitting there watching the movie calling BS for any of those reasons. This is the problem with talking about the books. Because talking about the book tends to skew people's thoughts about the movie. And if you just watch the movie, you don't pick up on anything regarding the opening or the closing being off. I agree with you that GoldenEye is specifically focused on one story from beginning to end, but that's only so far as comparing it directly to Casino. As Nanz said, it is the story of Bond becoming a 00 and then dealing with what being a 00 entails, namely the lesson of not trusting anybody. This movie does it right. There's nothing that they added to this movie movie that made it overly convoluted or crazy. Yes, it goes crazy with action that wasn't in the book. That action is fantastic, but there's still meaning to this movie, and that meaning, of course, is Bond learning the core lesson that develops him into a proper 00. When we did The Living Daylights, we talked about how that was just a short story, and the short story is the first 20 minutes or whatever, and then after that, it is solely whatever Mikey G. Wiz wanted to be doing at that time. Of course, one could argue the same thing here with it being a small book that's then expanded into this much larger movie, but that's ignoring the fact that if you don't read the book and you just watch the movie is great. It's a similar argument I've had a million times with people talking about The Hobbit. Now, if you think the Hobbit movies are bad, you think they're bad. But if you think they're bad specifically because they're a small book that was expanded into too many films, you're ignoring the fact that it was the adaptation that was bad. Because if the movies were good and had interesting storylines and characterizations that came from the screenwriters, like Casino Royale has, nobody would ever bring up the size of the book. Hell, Shawshank Redemption is generally regarded as the best film of all time, and it was based on a relatively small novella by Stephen King. But the movie's so good, nobody ever mentions that. So here, there's no complaint. The movie is good, therefore, it doesn't matter what the book was. That's why we avoid talking about them as much as we can, other than just interesting things that are relevant to any given discussion. K1 says, what is there to be said? It's a top 5 no matter how you slice it. Top tier villain, girl, car, and music. But when you shine this bright, you burn out quick, and the next 4 movies never reach this level again. Huevos Rants says, Casino might just be the best Bond film, not the best movie, if that makes sense. Ooh. Martin Campbell knocks it out of the park with the tightness of this flick. Bond gets distilled down in such an entertaining grown-up way. I'm a 90s kid, so when this came out, I was thrown off. But this is a super fresh Bond outing. Vuk Babalo says, the only thing wrong in Casino Royale is the train scene. There are no fast trains in Montenegro. Nitpick much, Vuk? Jeffrey Cole says, assuming there's lots of chat about Martin Campbell, our Lord and Savior, Martin Campbell, because obviously he's proven highly effective on 2 occasions in Bondland. You might check out some of his earliest work on a British TV show called The Professionals. This show is fun in any case, but his episodes have extra pizzazz. The mini-series thriller Edge of Darkness with Joe Don Baker, JDB, which he would later remake for cinema, is also a significant piece. And isn't Casino Royale perfect? The Ford product placement is a minor irritation. Cheers, f***ers! Thanks, Jeffrey. Ants in My Eyes Johnson says, my 4th Bond film in theaters. After the unfortunate debacle of Die Another Day, Casino brought a breath of fresh air to 007. At the time of Casino's release, I and kindred Bond fellows felt the series had washed out and was in need of a back-to-basics, stripped-down Connery/T-Dalt-esque gritty Bond. That's exactly what Casino delivered in spades. Literally. It's number 3 on my list behind GoldenEye and From Russia with Love ahead of Goldfinger. There aren't many things wrong with Casino aside from Craig having 0 ASMR quality. That notwithstanding, objectively, it could be placed at number 1. So, Answer My Eyes
we need
Johnson.
an edit of the opposite of ASMR for Craig, just like bursting through stuff, crashly throwing poker chips and flipping through disc cases.
Things that keep you awake.
Yes!
That's hilarious. Yes! But, dude, I mean, McCurdy,
He's
shocked.
getting a lot of support.
You're getting a lot of support, dude. And finally, Qwerty Manor says, meh. Just kidding, best movie ever. Also, it's not Jason Bourne. You guys may have noticed in a couple of our remastered episodes, a couple of our clips, that we had a meme lord step out of the shadows and join us in our fight of ranked supremacy. And one of these was submitted concerning Casino Royale being shittier than Die Another Day. On one side is the virgin Casino Royale. Boring-ass card game. Doesn't have invisible car. James Bond is a simp. Takes itself too seriously. No surfing scenes. Lame-ass love story. On the other side is the Chad. Die Another Day. Badass hovercraft chase. Has invisible car. James Bond ain't catching feelings. Cheeky puns. 2 surfing scenes. And then it says sword fight. but I will correct that and say 2 sword fights. Therefore, Die Another Day is better than Casino Royale. Boom, our meme lord taking motherfucking Casino Royale to the cleaners.
Who is the meme lord?
Dude, he chose to be anonymous. He is our anonymous meme lord.
A true memer of...
Exactly. I wasn't expecting this. I never read the comments until I'm doing them just now, and I'm shocked. Half are saying number 1, and the other half are agreeing with McCurdy, where it's like, maybe it's 4.
They have made it a lot easier to concede to you guys' points on it shouldn't be number 1. Coming into this episode, I did think there was a really good chance of it being number 1. But
I thought it'd be a battle. I thought I'd be the only one.
Hearing you
Apparently
guys,
I'm not alone.
You guys in the comments, and I would imagine the commenters like you guys are big Bond fans. For a Bond fan, is this a good Bond movie? And it sounds like, yes, it's a good Bond movie, but it's not the best Bond movie to a Bond fan.
Yeah.
And me, while I've become a Bond fan throughout this series, I didn't come in being a Bond fanatic like you guys and probably most of our subscribers. And to me, this is a great movie, and I would love to pop it in and rewatch it. I guess the comments and hearing you guys out has helped me gain more of an appreciation for what a crazy Bond fanatic person sees out of this movie versus like a layman like myself. Like, yeah, I appreciate Bond, but I'm more of just an average moviegoer. Like,
I mean, again, I expected to come in here and from McCurdy to be like, this is a masterpiece because it reminds me of Secret Service.
Yeah.
But McCurdy, I read you. I understand your thinking. And it kind of makes everything easier. But I have trouble putting this movie below Goldfinger.
Yeah.
I have trouble with that. Even though Goldfinger's awesome.
Yeah.
I do see this movie superior to Goldfinger. Yeah. I could ease my baby girl, my beloved from Russia with Love. If you were like dangling that in front of me, like, hey, from Russia with Love is better than Casino. Be like, oh, okay. I would give into that temptation, like diving into Solange. But I have trouble allowing Goldfinger to be above this movie.
I apologize, Goldfinger.
I'm conceding on these points because I'm just like, fine, it's below GoldenEye for me. Again, like I said before, this movie is a very great vodka. It's not the full martini shaken plus stirred. If it went with what I was saying, it's more or less because there's something about like the spectacle and the iconic stuff that really kind of weighs in on me when I'm watching these movies. And like it's so absent in Casino Royale to the point where I'm like, where is the nutty humor? Where are the really great car chases? Even with Goldfinger, I'm like, I even really love the back and forth between him and Goldfinger with the golf game. It's just as entertaining to me, or even sometimes more entertaining than parts of the poker scene. Like they're kind of on the same level. They're very quiet up against each other's scenes, but I love the wordplay in Goldfinger more than I do in the poker scene. I could see where there is that huge issue with how Goldfinger ends, where it's like, oh, he tricked the girl and therefore they switched the gas cans. Like, I think that the little hanging chad of that movie.
I must have appealed to maternal instincts.
I've made the case in the past where I'm like, Goldfinger is awesome and I love it. But at a certain point, movies are simply made better.
Yeah.
And this movie has a lot more. Again, I put it up there with GoldenEye because it has something to say about the Bond character. In the same vein of what you always said about why you love Secret Service, because of what it has to say about the Bond character.
Yeah. And I'm not, I don't disagree with that either.
Classically, I would always say, where you and I disagree, is that I think Secret Service it wanted to say a certain thing about the character, and it fell on its face. This movie doesn't fall on its face. This movie accomplishes exactly what it set out to do. And then that character that this movie births then informs the character I love coming out of GoldenEye. So I think these two movies are, again, the Old Testament and the New Testament together. They make up the great Bible of Bond. That's how I see it. That's how I see these two, as literally a first and second revelation considering Bond. And then on top of those, you have the two golden children of the Connery era of Goldfinger and From Russia with Love, who are like these great adventures of that, where one's the spy movie, one's the super spy movie,
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to the Bond character informing Bond lore, I think above those are the Old and New Testament of Martin Campbell.
Amen, brother.
Amen, brother. And as far as the movies go, I think GoldenEye's superior because it's so well balanced. Casino Royale is perfect so far as like taking Bond seriously. And then right below that are the two. I mean, like organizing this religiously is like you have God on top, GoldenEye. Then you have Jesus Christ at number 2. The second coming.
Oh my God.
Born again, and then the two like the saint of From Russia with Love and the saint of Goldfinger as like these two who like kind of support those two at the top. They're like the martyrs.
Which one's Judas?
That fucking you only live twice is Judas, goddammit.
Darling, I give you very best duck.
Well, that'd be lovely.
Speaking of Yolt, last time we pointed out the return of a familiar Asian buddy of ours, so we're going to do it again, but gender swap it this time. The woman on Le Chiffre's boat, who then returns as one of the poker players at the Casino Royale, is the same actress, Sai Chin, who played the Chinese agent and or prostitute from the opening of You Only Live Twice. So there you go. Now you know that.
I personally, like, if I wanted to watch a movie of all the Bond movies we've seen so far, I'm going to pop in Casino. But if you're going up to any old random person who hasn't seen any Bond and you're like, you want the Bond experience, here's GoldenEye.
I think GoldenEye is the go-to film. If you really want to know Bond, it's watch From Russia, watch Goldfinger, watch GoldenEye. The problem with Casino lies in the fact that it's trying to be an origin film, so there's a lot that's missing. I mean, if I had to be really honest, I mean, I would prefer watching The Spy Who Loved Me, because even that movie has the camp.
But James, I need you.
So does England.
And zaniness, but it still maintains kind of like what we traditionally think of a Bond movie, and it even still kind of slips in a little bit of story that's, you know, not as taken as seriously as this movie, of course, but it's like, you know, you kill all these henchmen, they have people that they cared about too, you know. So there's a little bit of that in that movie, but you know, again, like it's not Casino Royale is not a bad movie. I don't think it's a number one. And I think when we jump to conclusions like, oh, it's a number one, I'm like, is it? Because have you watched it lately? Because I don't know if it holds up as well as I thought it did.
A lot of people do, like based on the high. That is a fantastic ending. Just like the opening song gets you hyped, that ending gets you hyped. And so people are going to walk out of the theater being like, that was the best thing ever. And then once that high kind of cools down, then, you know, better heads prevail. But like I said, GoldenEye and Casino Royale as the Old New Testament, they inform the Bond character significantly better than these classics who are so good and enjoyable. But as we've said before, eventually these movies get surpassed. I mean, this one isn't better because it's got modern action. Because we've seen before what happens when the Bond filmmakers don't have a story to tell, so they just fill it up with unmotivated action set pieces. This movie is more than just an action flick because it's got not just a refreshing and complex bad guy, not just a fully developed and meaningful Bond girl, but ultimately what this movie means for Bond's character, going from naive, eager beaver to crushed Iceman. However, GoldenEye has all those things and a whole lot more so far as Bond flicks go. And while Casino may lack some of those... Okay, wait. Hang on. Iconic moments from Bonds of old, it successfully creates plenty of its own. So, fellas, let's go ahead and lock it in. Casino Royale, number 2. Unexpectedly, a lot of people wanted 2, 3, 4. We're going with number 2.
Super surprising, but good. Makes sense.
So, GoldenEye, Casino Royale, Goldfinger, From Russia with Love, License to Kill, The Spy Who Loved Me, The Man with the Golden Gun, Dr. No, The World Is Not Enough, If You Two a Kill, For Your Eyes Only, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Thunderball, Tomorrow Never Dies, Octopussy, The Living Daylights, Live and Let Die, Moonraker, Diamonds Are Forever, Die Another Day, You Only Live Twice. That was easy. I mean, you just take a deep breath beforehand.
Can you go all the way to No Time to Die?
No Time to Breathe.
What's our last one? Is it Die Another Day or is it...
DAD is second to last.
You Only Live Twice.
Is bottom.
We will. Okay,
Forever?
just like we
drunk.
swore, just like I swore that one day we would Goldfinger and get it away from the top. We will someday get You Only Live Twice away from the bottom. I swear it. I swear it, Sean. I
don't think
swear
any
it.
of the movie. I honestly don't think any of the next 3 movies.
You have to have a hard
one of them.
like
I
vendetta.
swear it.
One of them.
I said I swear it. All right. The list stands with 2 Martin Campbell films at the top.
Martin Campbell.
Martin Campbell, our Lord and Savior. Ian
God.
Fleming's disciple sent down to save us. McCurdy, do you have any words to say about Martin Campbell?
No, not really.
You
What's
just wanna
there
go
to
bed?
say?
What's there to say? I mean, the guy,
He's the best.
He made 2 of the best movies.
one guy understands Bond better than anybody.
And you know why? Because he started in softcore porn in the 70s.
It's like M being like, we need the best. We need 007. The Broccolis are like, we need help.
Martin
We need
Campbell.
Martin Campbell.
I feel the spirit. I feel the spirit. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Char, you look.
Yep.
It's too close to KKK. Hood.
No, this isn't KKK. This is like Assassin's Creed.
What are you assassinating?
I'm assassinating anybody who don't like Martin Campbell.
All right.
I love him. His first and second revelation brought me closer to, I don't want to say Jesus, because Jesus wouldn't approve
All right.
of anything
Mm-hmm.
that Bond does. I think when it comes down to why is Martin Campbell so good at what he does, it directly reflects the core character of Bond that I wax poetic about in my rant.
Action! 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 Go! 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 Go!
That's our director, Martin Campbell.
We'll see what happens when we do the love scenes. If you're shouting as much as that, I'm not sure it's going to work.
He can access the animality necessary to get the job done.
I like everybody to get up and really go for it, you know? Baptism by fire, really.
Yeah, you were on your toes, because you didn't want to get a whipping from his tongue.
Come on, how long are we going to be with this? Right, let's just get this guy into his damn boots and let's hurry it up.
If the prop is not there, then why the fuck isn't it there?
Anybody knows what the fucking doing. I mean, that guy doesn't. On top of that, he's a lunkhead.
He doesn't about. He doesn't make concessions.
Up over there, shut up. You need to just annihilate anybody that got in the way of the scene.
He's a classic directorial asshole.
Why are they coming out? Did I cue action? No. F***'s sake, what's going on? Wake up, you twat. Right. Stand by. Here we go. Tell everybody upstairs to all be paying attention and think about what they're doing.
A guy who fights for his vision and he makes the movie he wants.
He tells you exactly what he wants and he explains what he wants and he doesn't really stop till he gets it. It's nice to work with somebody who knows what they're doing.
Martin Campbell realizes the power of film and the power of storytelling to get everything absolutely perfect.
At the end of the day, he's a perfectionist and he wants the best out of everybody.
He does push, but it's good. This film needed that to really get off the ground again. And his energy was brilliant. He was a great man to be in the trenches with. You know, you need a warrior like that. You need somebody who you can trust and who you believe in as an actor.
Without being a nice guy. Because at the end of the day, the audience watching a movie doesn't know whether or not the director is a nice guy or an asshole. They only know if the movie is good or not.
Wouldn't go as far as calling you a cold-hearted bastard.
No, of course not.
The audience is unaware whether or not the director is a meanie head in the same way that in the Bond movies, the citizens of London get to go about their day in peace, ignorant as to whether or not James Bond is a butthead or not. All they know is the end product, which is that the world keeps turning. People always spout off weak bullshit like everybody should only ever be kind, but heroic figures like Bond are not kind because they have a job to do. Martin Campbell is no different, and it shows in his work.
My son, Christopher, he worked on the film as an AD, and he had to open the studio up numerous times, 4:30, and he'd go in, he'd open it up, and it was in the gas plant. Huge set, huge. And he heard these noises like... It was Martin behind the tanks, prepping the scene, running as Bond, running as Sean Bean.
And this man, this one guy, has scored 2 films at the top of our list by never making concessions, just like James Bond, just like the character that he has managed to bring to life so beautifully twice. The guy wins at all costs and never concedes a fucking thing. And that's what makes him such a good filmmaker, being a fucking asshole. Now, is he an asshole or is he just a guy who doesn't compromise? Same thing. He's a guy who takes what he needs to win and bring that fucking bacon back to the village. With that, hopefully Martin Campbell comes back, but small chance of it. The Lord of Bond, Martin Campbell.
Hey, someday he'll return, right?
Yeah, man.
For a third coming.
As I lay me down to sleep, I pray Lord Fleming my soul to keep. If I'm iced before I wake, I pray Martin Campbell my soul to take. In the name of the M, the Q, and the money penny. Amen.